That last show wasn't going to be what it turned out to be. Bloody hell. Jeremy chosen a Porsche 911 GTS. He genuinely was going to buy one. He even went down to the Porsche showroom in Mayfair.
Wow.
That's too many.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, good morning, whatever time it is for you. Welcome back to another wonderful episode of the WAYMOE SPOTCAST. I'm your host, Charlie, and I'm joined by a returning guest, Richard Porter, Sniff Petrol. Oh, do you know what? I had a look on your IMDb, and there was about 8 million different names for you. So we've got Richard Chapati,
Right.
Archbishop Desmond Porter,
Yes.
Billy Bob Porter, Francis Ford Porter,
Yep.
Monty Porter, Robert Leroy Porter, Sir Alec Porter, Sir Ranulph Porter,
Yep.
Sir Richard Wilmslow, and my favourite, Dr. Porter, I presume. None of them are Sniff Petrol.
Well, so this is because on the Top Gear specials, we used to
Oh, the credits.
do stupid credits that were in some way related to the show. So
Yes.
I suppose Dr. Porter, I presume, would have been the Search for the Nile.
Yeah.
And everybody was Doctor
Yeah,
surname,
I
I presume. And Saranov? God, oh, maybe that was the Nile.
No, because the Antarctica special, you had Ranulph Fiennes on.
Oh, there we go. Oh, look at
Oh,
that.
hello. Oh, followed by a...
GC6.
Look at that wing. Oh, hello. Bloody hell.
And a
Fair enough.
456, a
What
really
an-
tidy
what- That was
456.
looked like it could just come straight out of the factory. What an interesting convoy.
Do you think they're together?
I hope they're together. They're very
I
close.
sort of hope they're not, because then they could just... Because I was on my way here,
Yeah.
and a guy in an Alpine A110 just tucked in behind me, and then they'd closed the road, and we were wiggling across the countryside in these single-track roads, but it was just the two of us, and I was like, we could be going somewhere together.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I think I've got this theory that no one bad buys an A110.
No.
They're
No,
a real
very true.
connoisseur's car, and if you look at the famous people who've got one, it's Gordon Murray,
Yeah.
Nick Mason,
James May.
May.
Yeah. Yeah,
so,
very good.
you know,
Yeah.
they attract a sort of thoughtful, intelligent type of chap.
There's a point though, is there a car that Nick Mason doesn't own? Or maybe like a Ford Fiesta? Like a Mark
No,
6
he loves
Fiesta.
Fiestas.
Oh, does
yeah,
he
he's
really?
got, Mark 6 is a particular favourite. He's an Aston.
This is where it shows that Harry doesn't really know anything about cars. It's an Aston
I
Martin.
mean, you could spot that that's an Aston.
Yeah. No, back on the credits thing, I actually had a question about the credits. How did you go about doing that? Was there ever any BBC pushback? Is there some weird like union laws that you can't change everybody's name?
Oh, not that I'm aware of. There are certain sort of rules, or at least guidelines about credits, like double crediting people.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So sometimes you get those really grammatically difficult credits where instead of saying produced and directed by, they'll say producer and directed by, and you go, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You've got two sort of
it doesn't phrases
tenses.
that don't.
It's not tenses, but it's not quite right.
I don't know. I failed English.
It's something like that.
Yeah.
Prepositions sounds clever.
Sounds in the right area.
It's just a sort of thing where you're not supposed to have your name twice, although they do in American stuff, because you notice like the big stars in American TV shows tend to then be given an exec producer credit separately.
Yes, they're using that a lot to like, oh, this is executive produced by God knows who. And
Reese Witherspoon.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
He's always
yeah.
executive producing
Yeah.
things.
They did that for a while on albums. It's just like, oh, it's an executive produced by Kanye. It's like,
Yes.
Okay, so he's in the email chain.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's it.
He
Yeah.
just went, I know a good studio. Thanks, Kanye. We'll try it out. Yeah. Look at that.
Whoa, there was all sorts going
That's
on in there.
a wheelchair accessible Berlingo.
But it looked like it had been done up like a kitchen. Oh, did we? Oh, we get lots of people honking and waving now.
Do you?
Different, yeah.
That's nice.
But I didn't know if the credits was like most things on Top Gear, it was beg for forgiveness rather than ask for permission, and just put it out and see what the BBC say.
No, I don't remember that. I think it was okay. It was just then debating what it was going to be.
Right, yeah.
And we'd always have a bit of a chat about that and argue about what was the funniest thing. I mean, they're not particularly funny, any of them. It was almost just like a
It's
little...
novel, it's cute.
Yes, it was just a little thing for people who watched to the end.
Yeah, yeah.
So, it was the Middle East. It was... So I have Richard of Wilmslow was the Middle East because it was, Jesus of Nazareth was sort of thematically linked to
maybe they're on IMDb because they have to be, because that's how you've been credited.
Because IMDb, just sort of pulls things off the credits.
There must be a credits database or something.
Because I'm a bit narky at the moment because my credit got left off the last Grand Tour.
Do you know what? I sat and I watched the credits. I was like, "Where's Richard? I didn't see you anywhere."
I didn't notice.
Yeah.
And then someone messaged me and went, "I thought you said you worked on that show."
Yeah.
Which is why it's a bit annoying.
Yeah.
Because
great weather.
Because it's like, well, that's that. I mean, it's impossible to change now. It would be. I can't even begin to describe how expensive it would be to change for various reasons. Yeah. But.
The last ever episode. How did
it's there in perpetuity now, and it looks like I didn't work on it. And I didn't do loads of work on it because they're not really scripted, those. No. But I did work a lot on the planning stage.
Because I read it and was like, oh, we must have just not worked on this because it wasn't scripted. But you did work on it and you weren't credited.
I did work. I went to the office many, many times and sat in many meetings because that last show wasn't going to be what it turned out to be originally. It was going to be something else, and we spent a lot of time arguing about what it was going to be.
So was the original idea the electric M25 thing, or was that just complete bollocks?
That was a bit of a joke.
Yeah, I imagine
the original thing was going to be a sort of goodbye to the internal combustion engine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were going to go to America. I think I can say this now because it's all over, so I'm not giving anything away. Yeah, we were going to do this massive farewell to the engine.
Yeah.
Go to the US.
That's a good. I like that.
Buy like some real mega mileage cars and do a little bit of a road trip, but more like that French special we did. It would be kind of the hero cars would just be used to go between.
Between the pieces.
Interesting places to do stuff with interesting cars and do this whole kind of farewell to the engine. And we tied ourselves in knots with it a little bit.
Yeah, that seems to be slightly missing the point. Yes, you can do a swan song to the thing, but it's the swan song to the trio, really, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Well,
so I imagine was the discussion that arose.
Well, it was also James May going, well, I mean, see, technically the internal combustion engine is still going to be around for a long time after we're all dead. And we were like, yeah, that is true, James, but, you won't be able to buy a brand new one in this country within our lifetimes.
Cut to Jeremy Clarkson claiming that there will never be another V12 after the Aventador came out about 15 years ago.
Yeah, we sort of jumped the gun on that one. Yeah, it felt quite... And also, people did misinterpret that because they thought it was a sort of a really subtle way of saying, that's it, we're not doing any more of the show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we got loads of messages going, is that it then? And we're like, no. Because it was meant to feel like the end, but it was meant to feel like the end of this kind of engine. It wasn't the end of us. But yeah, so the last Grand Tour was going to be this big American kind of salute to the engine, and they had this grand plan. One of our producers had this grand plan to do the final shot would be all these amazing cars coming across the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, and then they'd all stop. I mean, whether we could get that bridge closed...
I was going to say, because it's that...
No one had really looked into this, but it was assumed that maybe with the right amount of money we could. And so they'd all come to stop on the bridge, and, the sort of drone shot would just go up and up and up, and that would be it. Goodbye forever. And we just couldn't... We did start to tie ourselves in knots, and it was Jeremy who just went, let's not do that at all then.
Yeah, good idea.
So there were a lot of meetings and a lot of...
You definitely came to the right conclusion. There was to have the episode end and then the season end as two sort of different acts was really nice.
Yeah, and, I was very pleased with it, which is why I was very annoyed that I wasn't on the credits, because I was like, although I couldn't take credit for an awful lot of it, there were little bits, and I always chat to the presenters about what cars are going to have and all this sort of stuff. So, I did get involved, and then, when I noticed the credits we got, I still haven't found out whose fault that was either. Because no one's taking the blame for it. They're all going, oh, I don't know, I didn't realise. I know you didn't realise, because if you'd realised, I'd have hoped you'd have said. What
would your role have been in the credits? It wouldn't have been script editor, would it?
Well, I don't know, actually. That's a good question. That would have made people go, there was a script, which there wasn't. I mean, there was a kind of, there was a script in as much as like what they were going to say at the start to get them rolling.
Yeah, of course.
But beyond that, there wasn't much. I don't know. Sometimes I do stuff for like ITV shows, and they don't like to credit writers because they don't want to make it look written or they don't want to make it look like the presenter hasn't thought of everything themselves. And you get credited as programme associate.
Programme associate. Okay, that's the vaguest possible thing.
It's a fantastic. The thing is,
on
everybody
payroll,
in the industry.
basically.
Yeah, it is. It's a kind of. But I think
Sounds
people
healthy.
in telly know what that means usually.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Although it's a broad church, I think it's people like Danny Baker or someone who is just sort of there. He'll bring gags and just sort of generally set a vibe for a show like he did with Chris Evans on TFI. I don't know how much actual writing he does, but he does sort of just help to steer the ship in the right direction. So he would be a programme associate. But it is a vague title.
A very vague title, yeah. Well, so what was your actual, on the Top Gear days, what was your actual like day-to-day like? Because I got the impression that lots of people had a lot of say in everything.
Actually, yes and no.
Right.
I think at our best, it didn't matter what your job title was on the team. You know, if you had a good idea or a good suggestion, a good idea is a good idea. And hopefully people were able to speak freely in meetings and suggest stuff because, you know, it was all, the more brains on stuff, it can help. But in terms of the sort of chain of command, it was a pretty short one because the buck really stopped, I suppose, ultimately with Jeremy. You know, he was a real arbiter of everything. So and then below that was sort of Richard and James and Andy Willman and me, and that was sort of it for the core creative. But obviously the rest of the team chipped in as well.
Because you said Jeremy had a very, very TV brain.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah, we were, last episode you were on, we waffled about Top Gear for about an hour and a half.
Did we?
We did,
Was it that long?
Yeah,
Gosh.
but I chopped it all out because the camera went funny.
Oh, okay.
And I was horribly unprepared because I have been, well, Harry will remember, we were watching Top Gear since as my parents would let me on a Sunday evening when we were at,
was in the room.
he was very much tuned out. And I've always kept a notebook of questions of like, how does this work? How does this work?
Yeah.
And I always promise myself, as soon as I get anywhere near anyone that can answer me these questions, I'll fire them all at them. So I do have a million questions. I try not to overwhelm you with them all. So I know you've probably been asked millions and millions and millions of questions about Top Gear for your entire life, and you're sick of them. So I'm trying to make questions that you've not really answered before or heard before. What's Jeremy like? What's Richard like? What's James like? And who's the Stig?
I should just answer with one word, abstract answers. Wistful.
Wistful.
Gaseous.
Jeremy let out the bag who the third Stig was recently, didn't he? I heard him passing.
Someone else said that to me, and I was like, "Oh, I missed that," and I was there, but I missed that.
Yeah, it was. I don't know where it was mentioned. I can't remember who it was.
I think it was. We did this sort of press event the Tuesday before that last show went live at Television Centre in this big studio there.
The weather's waited for us to sit down to start.
Yeah.
Always getting the Aphex Twin umbrella out.
Aphex Twin umbrella?
Yeah. Check this out.
How do you do it?
Look at that! Is that official merch?
Yes,
or
it is.
Is it?
Yeah, it's official.
Oh God, we're missing a trick because Johnny and I do merch with our podcast, but we don't do umbrellas.
Only the camera gets an umbrella. We have to sit here in
We'll
the
just sit
miserable
here
rain.
and get wet. It's fine. I did bring a raincoat, but you'll notice it's not the one I'm wearing, so it's in the car.
Well, hopefully this passes. If not, we can try and work something out. We need to buy a gazebo, really.
Yeah. So did Jeremy? Probably did just. It was a bit. Yeah, they did a Q&A on stage with Mariella Frostrup.
Who?
Yeah, Mariella Frostrup.
Sounds like
You're
name out of a
the
Roald
third person who I've mentioned it to, and they've gone, who? And I was like, oh, I thought
it's a
everyone
funny
knew
name.
she
It's a
was.
Roald Dahl-esque name.
Yeah, she's lovely. She's been on telly forever. I mean, but kind of maybe it's a bit of a generational thing. She's not on TV so much, but she's super professional, very good, and yeah, she did a very good job of keeping them in check.
Yes.
But yeah, I think maybe he mentioned it there.
I think there was a sense of, you're not going to fire me anymore if I...
Well, that's it. Who's going to fire him? Well,
Yeah.
I suppose Amazon could off his farm, but they're not going to because that show's a massive
Goldmine.
hit.
Well,
and also, they don't really care.
No.
Because it's
I've
the
noticed
BBC's
that. They
problem.
Yeah. And then it was, I think, a bit before, a few months before they announced the final episode of the Grand Tour. James May said he was told he's not allowed to say it's September, so he won't say that.
Yeah, it's...
It couldn't be a very well-kept secret anyway. Most of them were September, weren't they, after
Yes, I suppose they were. I don't know. It's...
That's lovely, the size of that thing. Is that a Renault? Making a hell of a noise as well. That's gorgeous.
Where's that from? France?
Left-hand drive. Great weather for it as well.
Those Heimer motorhomes, because the track is always much narrower than the body, they always look to me like they'd be very easy to turn over.
Very easy, I can imagine so, yeah.
Crockery
they're
everywhere.
French, they probably have the softest suspension on earth.
Yes.
I think you'd have to really, really try and roll them over.
Maybe not, yeah, maybe you could get a good angle on them, but not actually tip it. I don't know. They like to create a big splash, obviously.
Yeah, of course they do.
So the ta-da, it's going to be...
Ooh.
There we go.
Wow.
I'm assuming they're together.
They've got to be together, haven't they?
Oh, I guess this is Caffeine and Machine Crowd, then,
yes,
isn't
it's
it?
got to be, yeah.
Yeah, suddenly it makes sense, but...
Someone, I can't remember who it was that said it. I was watching a video yesterday. They said those RX-8s have suicide doors and suicide engines, which I thought was a very ample way of putting it.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Damn it, I wish I'd thought of that.
Yeah, I know.
That's very good.
I'm trying to think, I'll put a credit up here if he said that. Very funny person. Harry finds that funny, he doesn't even know why that's even...
See, look at that, it's crossing over. That's a crossover gag. You don't even need to know about cars to get the gist.
Funny enough, talking about crossover gags, I wanted to ask you what the difference in your role was between Top Gear and the Grand Tour.
There wasn't really much difference, I suppose. It was just, you know, because the great thing about working with Jeremy, Rich and James is that they are all excellent writers. So they don't need scripts written for them that they're just going to regurgitate, because they'll, you know, they're always part of the process. Jeremy particularly, because, you know, he'll just fret over the tiniest sentence or word.
Oh, really? Just
to make sure it's absolutely right.
Well...
And my job was really just to help out with that.
See, that puts me on to another question I had. Talks. Jeremy Clarkson used to say talks.
Yes.
Why talks?
I think because we wanted the show to have broad appeal.
Right.
And as it got more popular, we realised it was getting that broad appeal. So we should sort of not do anything to spoil that. So don't sound too nerdy.
Yep.
But there's no other way of saying talk. I think normal people don't really understand what talk is. I'm sure some people who are into cars don't fully understand it. You know, it's a mysterious thing, and the difference between that and power. So I think it was a way of just taking a nerdy thing and making it a bit silly, and therefore it was Jeremy's way of going, you don't know what this is, don't worry, I'm not taking it seriously either. So it's one of those ones, it's a bit like flappy paddle gearbox, which...
Yes, I didn't realise he coined that term until recently.
Hammond did.
Was that Hammond?
That was a Hammondism, yeah. That was Hammond coined that one, and then we adopted it wholesale. The problem is that was 15 years ago, maybe more.
Because it would have been around the time of the F1 gearbox, I'm presuming.
Yes, yeah, when they started.
360 or the Maranello.
Yeah, and then the first DSG started coming along, but it's almost like it feels it's been done to death now. Yeah. And I personally try and make a point of never using flappy paddle gearboxes. I feel like it's worn out, and you just need to sort of, because it was deliberately, again, being a bit sort of silly.
See, I never took it as silly. I was like, oh yeah, they're flappy paddles. That makes, because they're
it's quite evocative, isn't it? Yeah, that's the thing. And they're not really flappy, but they are kind of flaps. It makes sense without making sense.
Like a dog's ears, kind of.
Yes.
Yeah. So I always pictured it.
Yeah, those things were, but talks was, it's just a way of just going, if I say talk, I sound boring and stuffy. If I say talks, people know it's wrong, but that makes it sort of amusing.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to ask, did you ever write stuff slightly wrong, just on purpose?
Yes, all the time.
Yeah, I imagine
one of the ones that, I don't know where this came from, but for some reason Jeremy and I to this day, find it amusing, is deliberately using at and the wrong way around.
Oh, absolutely fantastic. We use it all the time. That is like a staple of Jeremy's way of talking, is what it is.
Yeah.
And child.
Yes, exactly. But
animal.
Also...
yes. What do you think of those?
I don't like them.
Do you not? I think they're so outlandish, it kind of comes back around to...
I like those. I like the old one.
No, see, I prefer those.
It's interesting, because I think that looks nicer, but also it's nicer to drive. That one,
is it really?
That new one is too wide.
Too wide?
It's really wide. And so, on anything but a really wide road...
You just feel a bit...
You can go as quick as a bastard, except you can't because you're terrified that there's a van coming around the next corner and you're going to shave one of your wheel arches off. So, yeah, I wasn't a massive fan of it.
Fair enough.
Going, oh no, there's Anne Cat coming towards us. But then going, when it needs an Anne, you know, oh no, there's been an accident.
Yeah,
it's childlike
it's
and stupid,
fantastic.
and it makes no sense, but I still find it amusing. So there was quite a bit of that, I suppose, just deliberately. It's just when you enjoy language and you enjoy using language, it's fun sometimes to muck about with it.
Yeah, especially I think a lot of the time when you're reading a really interesting book where the authors use like fantastic prose all the way through, and you can really see how beautiful they've thought about the language and the words they use and the cadence of everything. I think that can get lost on screen if they're reading a script, but then if it's just things as simple as saying "an" and "at" the wrong way round, it's a real signature that like pierces through the TV, and you're like, that's not right, but that's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's sort of putting something deliberately jagged into.
Yes.
It's like that. I think, was it Quincy Jones, the record producer, or maybe Trevor Horn said, you know, you've got to have these things in a track that just hook the ear.
Yeah,
you know, it can't be too smooth, and otherwise it becomes bland. You need these little bits that delight your ear. And I suppose doing sort of deliberately stupid things in sentences, particularly spoken words.
Yes.
Because written down, if you put "there's been an accident," it almost looks like a typo.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
If you say it,
there's some intention there.
Either you're genuinely just learning English and getting to grips with it, or you're mucking around, and it catches the ear a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, animal and child, I always remember.
See, look, I'm laughing now. It's so stupid.
It's fantastic.
It's not funny, but
we
it
do
makes me
all
laugh.
of the time. And it's so interesting to hear you talk about it, because it's something that's been in my vocabulary for years, and it's just something you and Jeremy found funny and thought you'd put on the TV.
Yeah, I can't explain it any more than that. But.
So there was a couple references across the shows. So like, in the India special, they talk about how, what are they called? What are they called? The people that are in charge of stuff.
Okay.
Fucking hell.
Managers.
Not managers, like on a government level.
Oh, ministers?
No, higher than that. Is it like oligarchs? Something like oligarchs. I'm trying to think what the... Well, they said they would always have Ferrero Rochers.
Oh, ambassadors.
Ambassadors, that's it.
Yes.
And then in the Grand Tour, they are in the ambassador's office, and there were Ferrero Rochers there. And was there lots of that people, like, I'm not the most attentive when I'm watching things because of my ADHD, but did you do a lot of playing with callbacks that you could get away with? Because it felt like you were really boxed in a lot by some of the BBC's, like, oh, you can't do that, you can't.
Yeah,
like Mr. Slowly comes to mind.
Oh, yeah, we weren't allowed to carry that over to... Well, we were advised not to by the lawyers. James was told by a lawyer, said, no, you're not going to say, oh, cock, are you? And he's like, I might do. I mean, I don't really necessarily always plan when I'm going to say it. And they were like, well, it's a kind of catchphrase associated with the old show. And James was really indignant. He was like, but I said it, it's mine. That like came out of my brain. My brain is still here with me on this new show. But they were like, look, we just don't want any trouble.
Like, I feel like Jeremy held off on Zesty Beverage as well.
Oh, did he? There
was a scene in the last the Grand Tour episode where I'm going like, oh, he's going to say Zesty Beverage here. And he doesn't. He says zesty drink and cool refreshment or something. I'm like, has he done that deliberately?
I don't think that would be
deliberate.
Zesty
Beverage man.
I don't know where he got Zesty Beverage
Zesty
from.
Beverage is my favourite of all of the Clarksonisms, I think. Or like brown food, brown drink.
I feel like he's lifted that from somewhere, but I don't know where. Yeah. But maybe not. I may be doing him a disservice. I never bothered to ask. Again, it's just sort of, maybe not, maybe he came up with it. It's saying something that no one else has said before, kind of, or at least not that you're aware of. A zesty drink is a strange thing to say, but do you know the Ferrero Rocher, it's a reference to an advert?
No, I don't. It might be a generational thing.
I think it's a generational thing. Let me take you back to the 1980s, I think it was. There used to be this terribly cheesy advert for Ferrero Rocher. Ferrero Italian, so I think it was an Italian ad, and they just redubbed it in English.
Yes. Oh, I love a dubbed advert when they're at a slightly different frame rate for the rest of it. Yeah.
And the sync's a little bit off. But
I didn't realise how much it rained.
No, I feel like I've diluted my zesty beverage now.
It's not so zesty anymore.
It's a little bit less zesty. The advert went, it was so sort of big grand house and there's all these S-classes and things pulling up outside and all these people in dinner suits and ball gowns getting out. And the voiceover goes, the ambassador's receptions were noted for their excellent taste, or something like, or exquisite taste. It might have been exquisite. Exquisite is a funny word in itself.
Exquisite's great.
Exquisite taste. And this butler comes out into, they cut inside and there's all these people milling around this gorgeous house, and this butler comes out with a silver platter and it has a pyramid, like in the Grand Tour special with the ambassador's reception. This pyramid of Ferrero Rocher. So if you're of a certain age,
right, that's
you just associate Ferrero Rochers with the ambassador's reception and his exquisite taste, but specifically the pyramid.
I
so
see.
The gag, because the British ambassador to Mauritania does not actually have a pyramid of Rocher in his house, but we made sure that one was brought with us, and so they could do that stupidity. Yeah. But then, that's the thing, when people go, oh, it's all scripted, that's a great example of how it actually works, which is there is a pre-planned moment, or there is a pre-planned situation, but what happens within that situation is completely unplanned and unscripted. So, oh look.
Oh yes. Ooh, what on earth's going on there?
So, yeah, them having a pyramid collapse.
Yes.
That was just them winging it. And Hammond, the bit that got me was when Hammond just gets one and he just, like a kid, just goes and sticks it in his mouth and then looks around.
I never noticed that, actually. That's quite good.
There's, I think that's still in the cut.
I don't know.
I don't know. It's weird because sometimes I watch early cuts of things and then there's a bit that gets taken out and you don't realise it's been taken out. You'll go, oh, you remember that bit where?
Yeah.
Go, no. Don't think so.
That would be great. I'd love to see all the.
But yeah, so that's all. That was all a reference. But that's interesting that you didn't know the ads, so you thought that was just us sticking around completely off-piste.
Well, I understood that you'd placed the Ferrero Rochers there.
Yeah.
But yeah. So was there a lot of these BBC like spikes that you had to go around with the Grand Tour? Because I know you couldn't do. There was really petty stuff. Honestly, like you couldn't have the lap times on a magnetic board anymore. Yeah,
these were all bits of advice from the lawyers.
So this wasn't, the BBC didn't tell you directly?
No, they didn't do anything. No, absolutely not.
See, I always thought they were imposed on you, but
no, not to my knowledge. No, I think it was...
It's a nice colour. Merlin purple?
Colour. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I think so.
Ah, unusual. No, it was the lawyers at our end saying... We do not want to give the BBC any grounds to take action. And our producer, Andy Willman, always maintained they were never going to do that. They would look stupid doing it.
Pretty bad, yeah.
Unless we did an absolutely wholesale thing in an aircraft hangar with all the same graphics and everything and went, welcome to Goptier. And they'd go, no, hang on, because there is, passing off or whatever. It's a legal thing. But doing a car show... it's a bit more of a broad thing. So, but the lawyers just said, look, to be on the safe side, things like don't have a set where the presenters are on a stage and there's audience behind them, because that will look like Top Gear. You sort of go, okay, yeah, that might fall into the passing off bit. Don't have magnetic lap time things. Don't. Well, we couldn't. They said don't have guests.
Yeah, that was a funny one.
And the reasonably priced car type thing. And
you slowly grappled with that over the seasons, and it waned its way back in, didn't it?
Yes, it did. In the second series, we had guests, but it was never very successful for a lot of reasons. And one of them was, we used to do Top Gear on a Wednesday. The studio was on a Wednesday, and the show went out on a Sunday. So it was pretty fast turnaround. So if you had a Hollywood star in the country on a promo gig, they want what they're doing on that promo thing. The movie is generally out that Friday. They want close. Yeah. It's no good if they're there going, go and see my new movie, and it's 2 months later and the movie is no longer in theatres.
I never put that together. That's a really good point.
There had to be a long turnaround time on the Grand Tour for a number of reasons, one of which was that if you live in, say, Germany, you can select to have a German overdub of the show. But the man who plays Jeremy is quite a busy actor in Germany, and they couldn't just get any old random, because people in Germany now associated this guy's voice.
I remember
being
Sebastian
Jeremy.
Vettel bringing it up in his interview about Jeremy Clarkson being voiced by a very, very famous German man. So yeah, they must have been associated at that point. So.
But this is one of the problems. They had to, you know, book some time to do that and make sure they'd got the guy to do Jeremy, and he wasn't always free. So they had to build in this long lead time.
So it's the Germans' fault, is what you said.
I wouldn't say it's exclusively the Germans' fault. It's, you know, it is the Amazon's desire to cater for as many people in many countries as possible.
I never made that leap. That makes a lot of sense. That it wasn't.
Just, to be honest, I never. When we started doing the show, and they'd go, right, you have to deliver the finished episodes here.
Yeah.
The series will start here, and we were like, what the?
Yeah.
What? But we used to do it in a week,
Yeah.
and it took a long time for them to explain very calmly. They went, look, here are some of the reasons why.
Well, it's a very different operation to the BBC, really.
Yeah, it's a very different operation, and so it meant that getting a big star, because
Much
when
more
you say to
difficult.
their agent or their promo people, could they come on, and they'll be like, yeah, can they promote the movie? Yeah, they can, but this won't be going out till October.
Yeah,
They'd be
and
like,
there's no point
well, that's
there.
no good for
Yeah.
us, so we're going to put them on Graham Norton or
Yeah.
somewhere where it goes out the same week.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was one of the reasons the guest thing didn't really work anyway.
Space saver on the front axle. Don't do that, people. Put it on the back, please. It's not ideal. Yeah, was there much of a crunch on on Top Gear? Were you working like all the way till like Sunday morning, or was it submitted like?
Yes, yeah. It was usually. It would have to, you know, there's a sort of whole process of processing a TV show. So, yeah, we do the voiceover for that week's films on the Monday. We'd get the studio script in order and prep for the guest on the Tuesday. Wednesday in the studio. And then it would be edited on the Thursday and Friday. But it has to go through things like there's a thing called the conform, which checks that it's just all to tech spec.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're looking for things like even sort of flash frames or something like that or stuff that could trigger epilepsy and audio. They want to make sure the audio's all good and consistent and there's no sort of horrible spikes or anything like that, or that there's something, you know, you can't hear.
Yeah.
Because the trouble is sometimes you work on something and you've watched it a number of times and there's something someone says and it's not very audible, but because you've heard it so many times you've figured out what it is. But you have to accept the viewer gets one shot, and sometimes so you just, the people in the conform might be the ones who go, you're going to need a subtitle on that.
Yeah.
And it's little things like that, just the real kind of housekeeping, but it's vital that it's done. And there's a lot of very diligent, clever people. And I mean, usually I can't remember the order of things, but yeah, sometimes there would be. Every so often, I'd get a call on a Sunday. You know, usually it wasn't really my department, but every so often the producers ring and go, you know that bit in the studio? We're just watching it back here, and it sounds like James says bollocks, but we're not sure because we don't know if we should bleep it. Was it in the script for him to say bollocks? So we're like, no. I think he says bollards, and they were like, "Oh, it sounds like bollocks. We're just going to cut it out. That's the safest thing to do."
Good thinking.
So yes, it did go to the. I mean, not to the wire, but every so often there's some major problem spotted. Usually, it was a technical thing. The show would, rather than in those days, 43 or 63.
63, I think. Bi-turbo.
Usually a tape would go to, I'm showing my absolute lack of knowledge now, but the tape would go to wherever in the BBC that they sort of put the tape in the machine, and then that's how telly happened at 8 o'clock on a Sunday night. But every so often, I think it would have to be played out directly from the machine.
Oh, wow.
And that was always seen as undesirable because I guess it's a bit less, or it was prone to more problems.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And that if it was being played out directly, that meant that it had really gone to the wire.
Really to the wire.
That was rare.
See, the question I hadn't even wrote down that popped into my head on the way here, the very, very last episode where it's just James and Richard in the studio. Yeah. When it's so funny to me that the last car Jeremy drove on Top Gear was that god-awful Vauxhall with the cocks on the alloys.
The Frontera. I forgot about that. Yes.
Obviously, the evening of that shoot is when the so-and-so Fracas happened.
No, it was a different shoot. It was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a shoot that a thing that never got broadcast.
Really? I thought it was that shoot.
No, it was. That series, again, talking about going to the wire, for various reasons we were really behind that series, and it is one of the reasons why tensions are running high anyway, because we were really up against it, and we were 1 3-header film short for the run, and the cupboard was a bit bare on ideas, and probably the budget was a bit bare as well.
I can imagine. That's nice.
So we had this slightly half-baked idea that each presenter would just choose a car they really liked. That was it. Pick any car, any new car you want, but there's something you really want to drive. Yeah.
Okay.
And go up to North Yorkshire and some beautiful roads and just do that. So it was a bit of a weak item, truth be told, but it needed to be done. Now that has got the tints, but it still looks good.
They are good-looking cars.
So that was what they had to shoot the Thursday and Friday, I guess.
I can't believe you ran towards the camera for that. Wow.
Go far.
Well, it's been to the Nürburgring.
Has he, though?
No, I know.
Sorry, just likes the shape of the stick. Yeah, so that was it. And this is
and that was the shoot.
All fell apart.
See, I never knew that. I always thought it was that. The last episode.
I can't even remember what the cars were. I remember what Jeremy, against type a little bit, was he'd chosen a Porsche 911 GTS.
I was going to say, was it a 911? GTS,
He genuinely was going to buy one, or said he was. He even went down to the Porsche showroom in Mayfair.
Wow.
But because he wanted a paint-to-sample car, and the salesman was being, I think, a little evasive about how long that would take, but clearly it was going to be months, and Jeremy's like, I just want a car, but I'd really like it in that amazing, I think it was a blue. And so he didn't commit and never did. But yeah, he had a 911. I think James had a Rolls-Royce Phantom drop head or something.
Oh, okay.
And I cannot for the life of me remember what Richard had. Some hot hatch, maybe. Yeah, so it's a bit of a weak item, and it never got. I mean, that's it.
Because my question was how did you get Jeremy on the voiceover? But that piece must have been finished long before the.
Well, actually, the voiceover for that last thing was done.
Post Fracas.
Post Fracas, because I probably shouldn't say this is a bit. Jeremy messaged me and said, because I always used to go to the voiceover and sit in the control booth, with the little button to key into their headphones and go, could you just do that again, please?
A little bit better.
But a bit better, yeah. And Jeremy messaged me and said, I'll see you at the voiceover or something, and I wrote back and went, no, you won't, because I'm done.
You mentioned this last time, you played a bit hardball in between the Fracas and...
Well, some of it was hardball, some of it was me just being procrastinating, I think. But, so Jeremy went down and did the voiceover on his own, or with a producer. And he was a bit sort of, to varying degrees, certainly by me, he was excommunicated at that point.
Yeah.
And I think Richard and James didn't really want to talk to him because they didn't really know what was going on. And they were a bit like, oh, God, he's really messed up here.
Yeah.
And they told me a story afterwards that they were walking together down to where we did the voiceover in Shepherd's Bush, and they saw Jeremy leaving and they both hid behind a wall.
That's fantastic.
So if anyone had been walking down the street, they'd have gone, there's those two blokes off the Grand Tour. Oh, look, they're both like this, like cartoon characters behind a brick wall.
Because at that point, paparazzi would have been all over Jeremy, and they didn't realise the two others were hiding behind a wall. That's brilliant.
Yeah. So they did the VO, yes, just after.
Not going to get in trouble saying that on the SPOTCAST, are you? You get an angry text from the pair of them, like.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's a bit all bets are off now because we're sort of done.
It's so far gone, and
not that I'm trying to upset them because I enjoy their company and I'd like to see them again. But and I'm sure at some point we finished that last Grand Tour was filmed last year, but then we had to film something else this year, and then we had to do this end of this press launch thing and something else as well. So we've kind of gone, it's all over. We had this big Christmas / end of days party,
and then it's
in December, and I still find myself sitting in rooms with them talking shit the way that we always did. So it seems odd to think that will never happen again. But I don't know, maybe it won't. but there always seems to be something.
Yeah. They're all very old, though.
They are very old.
They're very old.
Yeah. No, they are quite old. Mind you, I'm quite old now as well. So I had a conversation with James, in fact, at the when we were waiting to do the press launch, about how much our knees hurt.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh God, is this what happens now? We're just old men talking about the knees.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. It's like, obviously, they would be a massive goal to have on here, individually or whatever. But I feel like they're definitely at the point now when they're just done with it all. And
I think they probably are a little bit. They've done so much.
Which I completely understand. It's what, 23, 24 years since the
2002 we started it,
and even longer for Jeremy.
Even longer for Jeremy. You know, and James and Richard were both on telly before that, and
2002, yeah. That's when he was born.
What? Oh, for God's sake.
Yeah, it's not good, is it?
I was a functioning adult. I had a job in 2002. I didn't have a mortgage at that point, but, you know, I was able to sort of move through the adult world and not get...
What were you doing in 98? That's when I was born.
Oh, for God's sake. I know what I was doing in 98, because that's when I got my first proper job. That's on old Top Gear, when Top Gear was on, you know, on a Thursday night, and it was a sort of very sensible magazine show, which is where I first worked with Jeremy, because he was still on the show at that point, and about 6 months after I started, he left. But yeah, 98 is embedded in my memory, because it was
It's good to hear.
I can hear something coming.
Is it a bicycle? Cool. Sounds like a bike.
Oh, it's the tyres. I think it's the tyres.
What a funny noise. Yeah, it sounds like it's got a flat, doesn't it? How bizarre. Bouncy seats, yeah, they got the bouncy seats.
Yeah, 98. I was working in a shop, and then I got a job on Top Gear, which was great, because that's the job I really wanted. So while you were busy being bored, I was going, yay, I'm moving to Birmingham. Yeah,
so I don't think, a lot of people don't realise this, it wasn't until like season 3 or 4 that you worked out that you could have the 3 of them together outside, rather than just, because I think it was you that said it was supposed to be like a kind of like a Bond lair that they all regroup at and explain what they've been up to. And how did that come about? Where was the like lightning bolt? Like, why can't we just have them together outside?
I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. It was the theory that they go out individually, they do something, they come back to regroup in the studio and, you know, report back. Yeah. And I actually can't remember the sort of the process that led to suddenly going, well, what if they...
Yeah, it's a lovely dog.
What if they did go out together? I don't know. I sort of feel like the springboard was that we'd noticed that at that point you could buy sort of seemingly serviceable cars for 100 quid.
Oh, how times have changed.
I know. Well,
drove them to Manchester and back, right? Is it Manchester?
Yeah, we drove to Manchester, and then they went to the airfield and crashed into brick walls and stuff. But I don't know why that particularly sort of became this. I feel like it was just something we went, well, this is interesting, but it would be more interesting to see the range of cars you can get rather than just pick one. And so it was a bit like an experiment. Let's just see what happens. And then sort of going, oh, all right, that's interesting. Maybe we need to break our own rule. Yeah. You know, bearing in mind, one of our other rules in the early days was we don't go abroad.
Really?
Yeah, we don't go on car launches, because old Top Gear would have gone, like, you know, there's a new MX-5, they're launching it in Spain. Yeah. Get Tiff on the plane. Yeah. He'll go down there and he'll do just a self-contained road test in beautiful sunshine on nice, quiet, sweeping roads. And for some reason, I can't remember why, we won't do that. I think the reason was because that's what old Top Gear did.
That's, I was going to say, it distinguishes you from the rest. That's what Fifth Gear would do. That's what the YouTubers do.
So it was, we bring...
Ooh!
Now they've done stuff to that.
What is with those rims?
Is it Mansory or something?
That's too subtle for Mansory.
Yes, it probably is, isn't it?
That's been stanced. It's got dished wheels that were like a mint blue.
It wasn't bad though, as these things go. I'm generally against this sort of shenanigan, but that was all right.
Shenanigans is the right word for it. Yeah, shenanigans.
So Yeah, I think it was a deliberate kind of, the cars will come to us. It was a slightly arrogant thing, but it was just like...
It's true, though.
We will not do the manufacturer's schedule, which is the launches on this date. We will say to them, send us the car.
Yeah.
And we will decide where we go and what we do with it. And I guess it kind of worked. But obviously then we did end up going abroad, and ultimately the show ended up being almost exclusively abroad.
Yeah.
So, it's good to have rules, but then it's good to be able to break your own rules.
So this is around the same time that you moved away from... You did surveys a lot. You broke the fourth wall and spoke directly to the audience quite a lot in the early seasons. Where did that change come from? Did you just be like, we don't... Because a lot of the time you were trying to fill the episodes. That's where the cool wall came from. It's like, we need... we're 10 minutes short here. Was it because you didn't need to fill them as much, or did you just...
Well, I mean, the cool wall, it was because we thought that the studio had to justify its existence.
Yeah,
there had to be things that happened in the studio. And so there was the news and there was the guest, but it was useful sometimes for various reasons to have other bits of studio business. And, so there was that time that Jeremy built a V8 blender.
Yeah, V8 blender, yeah.
And...
we put a brick in it.
I think we once pulled did we pull a tablecloth? You know that old tablecloth trick?
Yes, you did.
With a motorbike or with a car?
I think it was a car. I'm trying to remember what it was with. Maserati springs to mind, but that might be completely wrong.
Maybe.
It might have been a bike.
I can't remember. We might have seen someone do it with a bike, and we decided to try and do it with a car. Yes.
I think you showed the clip of it with the bike, and then you did it with a car, and
it
didn't work.
It didn't work.
No. Ambitious but rubbish, as always.
Yeah. But then I think as the films grew in scale and ambition, they just necessarily got longer, and it squeezed out the studio.
And then, so with the surveys and stuff, you just didn't need to...
Well, the survey was also, because that was all tied into Top Gear magazine. They had this relationship with JD Power to do this reliability survey. And so, we were asked to do our bit, because we had a good platform to get people to send in the details of their car and whether it broke down.
Are they turning right, or are they just...
No, oh, yeah, there we go. All right. I went out last night. I went to see a mate for a pint. And the plan was always... It's interesting.
That is very interesting. It was like a matte, like a chalk black wrap that had been peeled away. Interesting.
We were supposed to go for a pint in a curry. And even though the curry house is across the road from the pub and we could smell it, and it smelt amazing.
Yeah.
There's a friend of mine I haven't seen for a while, and so we had a lot to catch up on. And so we didn't go for curry, we just drank pints.
Yeah.
And then I walked home, and it was really late, and there was no time to make any food. Like, I couldn't be bothered to even make some toast, so I just went to bed, and I woke up this morning going, why do I feel shit?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because I just had pints and not curry.
Yes.
Anyway.
It's a good job it was pints. If it was wine, I don't think you'd be here.
No, well, pints of wine.
Pints of wine. Sounds like a band name, isn't it?
Pints of wine. Yeah, I might.
I hope you don't mind us waffling so much about Top Gear.
No, it's fine. I'm always very flattered that people are interested, because
it's funny from you. Phil McGovern from Cafe the Machine mentioned that you. I think I said it. You were aggressively humble.
Aggressively humble. I work very hard on my humbleness. I mean, I sometimes just practice being humble in front of the mirror.
Yeah. From your perspective, it's just a TV show that you made. But obviously it's Top Gear.
Well,
but from everyone else's perspective, it's one of the biggest shows that's ever aired. It's a lot of people's claim to what got them into cars and who they are as a person is your show.
Yeah, and what's really interesting, because yes, it is just a TV show in a sense, but I do work on other TV shows and have done for years, but not as fully invested as I was with Top Gear, because that was my main job, but I'm freelance. So even when at the height of the show, I would usually only do 4 days a week because I sort of had other gigs going on, unless we really were sort of all hands on deck. So, but there's no other show I've done really that I've felt as passionately about. And
there's very few other shows that could work as a vessel to get like the Sniff Petrol way of thinking out into the world so easily.
Yeah, and it's Sniff Petrol that got me the job in the first place, because Jeremy was an early reader of the website, strangely, and Andy Wilman as well. But they're smart enough, because I when I started doing it, and then people found out, because I did it anonymously, and when people found out who was behind it, I got quite a few. It was very nice. Got like sort of the editor of Autocar took me for lunch and said, "Could you do something like Sniff Petrol but for Autocar?" I went, "Yeah, I'm sure I can." But then we sort of started to get down to it, and he's like, "Well, you couldn't probably say this, and you probably couldn't say that," and I was a bit like, "Well, it's not going to be Sniff Petrol, is it?"
No, it's called Sniff Petrol to start
Yeah.
with. It's the only thing the only thing it's upped by is car pervert, which is...
Yeah, I know. Well, that's why Johnny changed his channel to the Late Break Show, because he was advised that car pervert was slightly off-putting to some brands and things like that.
He's stuck with it on his Instagram, which you got to hand
Yeah,
it to.
yeah. I think in his heart he is car pervert. Late
yeah.
Break Show is just a sort of title of convenience to make sure that American companies particularly will sponsor him.
The Late Break Show is a great name.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where it's, you know, good names sort of feel like part of the furniture, like you can't remember it ever not being there because it's just sort of... So...
what a noisy vehicle.
It's the same guy, isn't it?
There's Case. It's like your jacket. You know your jacket that says Case on it? It's that tractor. He got a thrift shop jacket, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's a tractor brand.
Oh,
I don't know.
Okay. Oh, it's the same people.
Yeah. Did I call it a thrift shop?
Like a
charity shop. I don't know why I said thrift shop. It's like Johnny saying garage.
Garage.
It's a garage.
Thrift shop's American, isn't it?
Yes.
That's because my...
Ooh, hello. What is that?
Oh, hello. Is that a GT12? No.
Ooh. Debadged?
I'm not sure it is. Maybe
not. There's something going on there. But it's not an AML plate, so it's someone's actual car.
Yeah.
How bizarre.
Yeah, my niece, or my wife's niece, her sister's daughter, was over from the US this year, and she announced when she arrived that one of the things she really wanted to do while she was in the UK was go thrifting. Which just means, you know, trawling the charity shops for vintage and interesting clothes.
Thrifting.
Thrifting.
They love their funny little names for things, don't they? Oh yeah. So last time we spoke about Top Gear, when we babbled I felt so bad about that because I'd asked Johnny to come on, and I didn't know you'd come with him, and then he just spent an hour laying on the floor while me and you were waffling about Top Gear, and I'm like...
I had to have a wee behind a hedge, but also because I'd had a couple of pints of delicious beer
because of the Eagle.
Yeah, because Johnny said I'll drive home. I was staying at his house, and we were off duty from doing the stuff we'd been doing on stage, and I was like, "Fuck it, there's a bar over there. I'm going to go have a pint." And then someone bought me another pint, and I was like, "Well, this is lovely, and it's a beautiful evening." And I took my pint and I wandered and had a look at some cars I hadn't seen, and I had a real sort of moment of zen. I was like, "This is perfect."
Yeah.
I had a nice chat with a few people, and then we jumped in the car, and because Johnny was going, I said I'd go and do this thing, but I'm not even sure if they're still there.
Yeah.
So when we pulled up, it was all very ad hoc. We then went back to Johnny's house via somewhere to get some food, and we had to record 2 podcasts.
Yes.
It's a miracle that we did, because by the end of the second one, I looked across the table at Johnny, and he'd just gone into like standby mode.
Yeah, I felt so bad for keeping you back.
No, God, it wasn't your fault. We're terrible timekeepers anyway, so we'd have been there doing something no matter what when we should have been going home. But
I remember on that it was one of the on the other stuffs, because you mentioned us on there, and but Johnny mentions that he spotted that there were a Fiat Multipla with a double sunroof.
Yes.
And he fucking didn't. It was me who pointed out it was a double sunroof, Johnny.
Oh dear.
Watch the episode. I go, "Zach, got a double sunroof," and he goes, "Shit, it has." Oh, we've been blocked. But yes, I felt terrible. He was just rolling around on the floor, and I was fanboying over you.
That's okay. I think the main thing is he just needs to lie down, because
watching him walk around that show, he couldn't go five paces without someone coming up and talking to him.
Well, part of his problem is that he is just too nice.
He's fantastically nice.
And he'll give everyone loads of time rather than sort of go, "Look, I'm really sorry, I've got to keep moving."
Yeah.
And so he can't move through a car show in less than 5 hours.
Yeah.
It's just impossible.
Yeah, he hadn't peed the whole time.
No. I find those Jag XEs, if anything, just get better looking.
Really? See,
I really like
all the Jags blend into one for me. They've got the Mercedes problem with the names, and I just couldn't tell you what they're called. I had to look to work out what you were talking about. XE, XF, F-Type. I can't keep up with them.
So that's the 3 Series E1.
Right.
But and which does look a lot like, particularly from the front, the same era XF.
Yeah.
But the XF has got the sort of extruded, stretched out tail, and it's just not as nice looking. That's got that lovely little bobtail with a kind of ducktail on it, and I think it looks fabulous.
I like the long wheelbase ones, the XJL, I think it is.
Yes.
They look very nice.
Yeah, again,
that
last generation XJ, I think, has sort of, like good Jags do, has mellowed into itself, and it's just still a really nice looking car.
Are they axed now, and they're not doing those lines anymore, do you reckon?
So the XJ's dead. This is why I was excited that we were going to come here.
Yes. We have seen there has been some AML traffic.
But the JLR's Gaydon R&D centre is just up the road from here.
There's lots around here.
So the chances of seeing some prototype stuff going by is probably quite high.
Yes.
But yeah, the new Jags, the new generation of Jags, which will be with us maybe next year, are supposed to be testing now. So keep them peeled.
Yes, we have.
Because nobody's packed the Jag yet.
Like I said, we caught the new Vanquish about 3 days before it was announced, but we hadn't pressed record yet. The worst example we've had of that, the JM on Cars episode.
Yeah.
We stopped recording, and as we were packing up, a 918 Spider rolled past, 50 mile an hour.
Here?
No, that was outside the other caffeine machine in Bedford.
Oh, okay.
Apparently it's local. Oh, that is an interesting colour scheme over there. It's a highlight smart car with stripes. What an interesting car. Yes, Jeremy Clarkson had a TV brain, was the quote I remember you saying to me.
Yes.
Do you have any good examples of stuff where you would be really excited, like, oh, this is a great idea, that would make it to Jezza and he would explain very calmly and very specifically why it wouldn't work? Did it happen a lot? Was he...
I mean...
Or would he more make it work?
Yes, sometimes he'd go, I like that, but what about this?
Yeah.
And you'd go, oh yeah, that is better. God, I can't think of it. I've gone blank on a specific example, but it was a fairly, it's a fairly sort of standard part of our process. And sometimes he would take something and he would simplify it to the point where I'd be a bit like, oh, you've really kind of dumbed this down.
Yeah, you've got rid of the...
But he has a terribly good knack for knowing what hits home with a broad audience. Yeah. And so some of the stuff that I thought was maybe a little bit dumb, I mean, V8 blender would be an example of that. I was like, this is so sort of knockabout stupid. And everybody knows which direction it's going in. This is not going to work brilliantly. No. It's going to be messy and stupid.
That's an interesting choice been made there.
That looks like the screen has misted up. Bloody hell. No. That's too many. That's too many crops. I think that's doing damage to something. Oh, hello, look, there's another BM coming this way.
Ooh. That's quite nice. Still banging over there, that's ridiculous. Smells as well, it doesn't smell like healthy engine, does it? Yeah,
I can't help thinking that's not good.
No.
Even though he's probably
like
set it up like that.
A couple of burbles look like when you take your foot off the accelerator. That's cool. But that's just ridiculous. Or the coal rolls. Have you ever seen a coal roll?
Yes.
So, we got gassed out of an episode.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not come out yet, but someone comes past and lifts off, and it's an explosion, and it's foggy.
And do you think they set their car up with a, what was it, a truck?
No, it was a Seat Leon or something.
Oh.
Yeah, you just put too much diesel through, I'm presuming, and it just...
I've never seen that here, because obviously there's loads of clips on YouTube of people with massive pickups in the US doing it.
Have you not seen it here?
No.
You've not seen it? It's normally like a Fabia VRS or something.
Okay.
Where I
mean, I have seen like a shit old Mondeo just like spewing black smoke, but that's because they've taken the DPF off it because it's broken.
My friend RJ let me drive his Fabia VRS that's all souped up, like hybrid turbo, stupid, ridiculous car, to Silverstone. And ignoring the fact that when we got to Silverstone, I could taste diesel in my mouth and like it was not great. But it's very funny, you go behind, you sitting in front of your mates and the traffic lights, and he's like, right, put your foot on the clutch, build it up to about 4,000 RPM, and then blip and come off, and then it's just big fucking black, like James Bond puff of smoke comes out the back. You're like, this can't be good for the environment.
No, this is not good. There's no upside to that. It's just, that's horrible.
Yeah, it is.
Because that's it, I get a bit, I guess because people have gone right off diesel, but I used to get annoyed when you would be following someone in a car where they'd clearly taken the
DPF
the DPF off.
Yeah, and you can taste it.
And you can taste it, and it's coming through your vents, and you're going, well, this is bad for me now, as well as everyone on the pavement. And it's like, I was like, if you're going to take your DPF off, yeah, you can do that, but you have to then agree to stand or lie with your head by the exhaust for 1 minute while someone revs the engine. And if you're happy to do that, you can have your DPF off.
See, I remember very vividly the first diesel car you had on the track was a 535 BMW.
Was it?
Well, so Jeremy said in the piece.
Okay.
Was there really much of a pushback of like, oh, let's not, I don't want a diesel on the track, or was it just playing it up for the cameras? Because there was a lot of things like that, like Jeremy hating Porsches or like the environment and stuff like that.
Well, again, I suppose that is sort of symptomatic of his good TV brain. That he understands that he has to play this character, the character of Jeremy, which is Jeremy, but just everything turned up a bit.
Up to 11.
So he's a bit bigger. It's a really funny thing. Every year for the past few years, Johnny and I have been invited to present some stuff for Goodwood at the Festival of Speed. Yeah. And we do this little on-camera thing. You know, obviously Johnny is a very experienced presenter. I'm not. But I like doing that because it's kind of fun and it feels fairly low stakes in that, you know, it's a kind of enthusiast audience and they're there for the cars.
Yeah, of course.
And hopefully some of them are aware of who we are as a duo because they listen to the podcast, so they're slightly more forgiving.
Yes.
But I always find what's interesting about it is that we do, you know, that's the thing, that's the only presenting I really do every year. So I get there and I get myself all psyched up and they go, okay, ready, and action. And I feel like I'm going, hello and welcome. And I've become so ridiculously big because I understand you sort of need to do that.
Yeah, you need to turn
and
it
I
a
watch
little
it back and it looks like I'm going, hi everyone, I hope you
enjoy
enjoy
really?
it. Yeah, I was like, I wasn't big enough, but if I'd gone any bigger, I'd have felt absolutely ridiculous. And the great skill of a presenter like Jeremy, but he's not alone in this, is that they can just turn themselves up enough that it reads down the camera, but they don't seem unnatural or ridiculous doing it. And his self-awareness as just a sort of technical presenter is very good. The same is true, of course, of Richard. And I think James, you could see he sort of developed as a presenter.
Yeah,
so that, again,
he's watching him grow.
Very natural
so
now.
Good. But
early stuff that he did for Driven and Old Top Gear, he was probably a little more starchy because he was still getting to grips as a sort of naturally quite a more reserved man. This idea that you do have to turn yourself up a bit, but without seeing like you're being Mr. Tumble.
That's what I feel was the real Achilles heel for when Chris Evans took over. Is he couldn't nail that perfect level that Jeremy could, coming from the radio background.
Yeah.
I feel like he went a bit too far and the audience was so used to Jeremy. Like, how are you going to follow Jeremy anyway? There was a suicide mission to start with.
Yes.
But that was one of the things that's just like it shows you how you sort of lucked out with the presenters. It's just like, by coincidence, this is some of the best TV chemistry to ever grace a television.
I was talking to someone about this the other day because they asked, I don't know why this came up now, we've had 22 years to ask me, someone said, how did you find those other two? And I was saying that the screen test process was incredibly short, really, and particularly knowing, you know, that the process they went through for the other presenters on the Evans era Top Gear.
Sounded they had a very long process.
Yeah, they did. I don't know how many days down at Dunsfold, and everybody did a sort of coming in hot to DBX. Oh, he's really on the. There was some nose dip there.
Oh, really?
As he realised he's gone into the 30 zone.
777.
Is that
the fancy one?
Sure.
I can never tell them apart. I always find it funny. I always see Ford Cougars in the distance and think it's one of those.
I saw one of those the other day, driving along, and right behind it was a just outgoing shaped Fiesta. Yeah. And it looked like a dad taking his kid for a walk. You're like, you've got a family resemblance there. Interesting. What were we saying?
I don't know. What were we saying?
Oh, screen testing. Yes. Yeah. So they did this massive sort of thing at Dunsfold, and it was because, you know, there's a lot riding on it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the problem with it. There was so much pressure, whereas, like, your era of Top Gear, it really did take 5 or 6 seasons to really find its footing, and Evans didn't have that.
No,
to do.
That's the thing. The odds were stacked against them because everybody was looking and they couldn't just blunder about, make mistakes, learn from those mistakes and try and get better. It had to be perfect from the off, really, or people were going to give it a hard time. And they'd probably give it a hard time then anyway.
Yeah, oh, for sure, yeah. It's a losing battle.
So,
it's a shame it really started to find its footing in the recent seasons as well.
Yeah, definitely.
It was getting there. Chris Harris, nothing but good things to say about him as a presenter. I think he's fantastic.
And then, the other two were, again, people who sort of seem to, understand that they need to be a certain person on telly. Because, I don't know Freddie Flintoff. Though weirdly, I have written for him because I used to do stuff for League of Their Own. I still do. But I've never met him. And I gather, he's a really nice guy.
Yeah,
and
nothing but good
quite
things.
Sort of thoughtful, sensitive bloke, but he can play the, for want of a better word, the jock.
Yes, for sure, yeah.
And same on League, he has this, he played, when he was on that show, this sort of big, boisterous character, but I think he's much more nuanced in real life. He's just smart enough to understand what works on telly and what's required of him to make the TV work and make it watchable.
Such a stream of just uninteresting cars.
Yeah, there's sort of medium-sized SUV, medium-sized SUV.
Yeah, it's funny. I can't remember what. I think it was the last episode of Top Gear with the trio when they say that experts predict within the next 15 years 70% of the cars on the road will be sports utility vehicles, which is pretty much where we're at now.
Well, yeah, although I was looking into this a while ago, and at that point, things have shifted a bit in the last couple of years, I guess. The top 10 bestsellers in Britain, there were still more cars than there were SUVs.
Oh, really?
I think that's going to change, though, because apart from anything else, it's like the Fiesta's gone, so now if you go to a Ford showroom wanting a smallish car...
You're not going to be able to buy anything not SUV, really.
No, if you want a Fiesta, you get pushed into a Puma now, and...
I don't understand the logic behind it, to be honest. I've never got it.
Well, I know, we can rail against it, but it's sort of the market.
Yeah, it's the market's done what it's done.
The market deciding.
We're just like, what is it from Simpsons with old man yells at cloud?
Yes. You sort of have to hope it'll come back around because everything is cyclical, isn't it? And fashion changes.
We're talking about this with Johnny about it coming back to like the true base model, like rubber bumpers and stuff, because of how complicated cars are getting now.
Well, yeah, and I gather, I was just reading a thing, I don't know how true this is because I haven't looked into it, that in Sweden SUVs are considered a little vulgar and the estate car is still...
Same if you need supercars, they're very reserved. You won't see a supercar in like a city centre or something like you will in London.
It's funny, isn't it? And it's almost like you go to Italy, the home of the supercar.
Yeah,
you very rarely see. Yeah, you don't see many supercars, almost any, unless you go to Maranello. You just don't see, even in Rome or the big cities. You'd see far more supercars in London.
Yeah, you really do. They're everywhere in London. They're pop and bangs on there.
Yeah, and I don't know whether it says something about us as a nation.
Yeah. I keep referencing our last chat. I need to put it somewhere so people can watch it. You spoke about how originally you could, after like a recording, just go to the pub with the presenters and just have a beer afterwards. Yeah. And it got to the point where you were getting mobbed, basically.
Yeah.
Do you have any specific memories of where a crazy fan interaction or like, oh bloody hell, I don't feel safe here, or?
Not feeling unsafe, but it was kind of a slow process. Because when we were planning Top Gear in 2002, and it was, Andy and Jeremy and I used to go to the pub sometimes. So there was a pub in Notting Hill that was near the little flat that Jeremy had at the time, and we'd just go in there. And I guess it's Notting Hill. There's a lot of celebrities milling about.
Yes.
And
is that where you saw George Daniel having a pint? Or George Daniel's parents? Or Matty Healy's parents? Someone from the 1975 in a pub.
No, I saw them in Wilmslow where I grew up. Oh, hello, here we go again.
What a cod
deliberately
piece.
Now he's doing too much, mate, too much. there must come a point where you just go...
Could you pick up a girl from a date doing that?
No.
Dad, my date's here.
I once picked up someone for a second date in... You maybe don't remember this. There was a car called the Proton Satria GTI.
Yes.
You familiar with those?
I love a Proton.
Faux Allen key heads on the wheel arch extensions. So they looked like they'd been put on by you.
Yeah.
And it was quite a nice car to drive. Lotus had done the work on it.
Yeah.
And so I had one as a press car. And I went to pick up this woman for a second date, and I just remember her face when we walked out to the car, and I instantly realised I'd made a mistake.
Oh, that's a shame. So those Protos look really nice. Those Proton at Festival, the Unexceptional that we were at. The Black Knight, I think it was called.
Yes.
Absolute stunning car.
There was a guy at the Festival of the Unexceptional that I know a little bit, Andy Wheel. He's one of the senior designers at Land Rover. He did the Discovery 3. And he is a lovely, lovely man. He went to Festival of the Unexceptional in his immaculate Citroen CX.
Yes, yep.
You see it, the black one. That was Andy's.
You can still hear that beamer.
It's probably he's 20 miles away and we're still getting the echoes. And Andy realised that there was that Black Knight, which I think was the pre-facelift of that shape of Proton, and then there was a facelifted one. Yeah. Andy suddenly realised that he worked on that facelift. It's one of his first jobs in car design.
Oh, that's so cool.
So he was having this massive flashback to the 90s going, bloody hell, I did that. And then he was sort of going, yeah, it was a classic facelift story. There was no money in the budget. We just had to do what we could for minimal changes.
That's funny. It must be so bizarre as a car designer. Just seeing a car that you design just wander past.
Well, it's also the lead times.
It's insane. Because,
you know, if you do a telly show, and even if it is something that needs a bit of processing, or it's just that they've scheduled it for later in the year, you're kind of there going, God, I can't wait for people to see this, but, you know, I'm going to have to wait 3 months. Yeah. I got very frustrated, like, doing books, because you end up sort of turning your homework in like, March or April for a book that come out in October, and you're a bit like, oh, come on.
Sorry, Harry's... What's the matter?
You've got fluff in your bin.
Oh, thank you. I'm really annoyed. I had the idea too late. I was going to have him in a lab coat. And he was going to bring me the questions in a gold envelope. But I couldn't find... Wix had them, but they weren't available for collection, so... It's a shame, really.
Is that why you asked me if I owned a lab coat?
Where did that come from? Where did the lab coat thing come from?
Gosh, I can't remember.
Because the producers were this just ominous thing that was referenced.
Yeah, I think it was just a way of making it look more like it's a thing. Because if it was just someone shambling in their clothes, it somehow puts more, not formality, but ceremony on it.
Yes, very much you were going for the rats in a lab kind of vibe with the trio. There was this omnipotent Willman in the sky.
Yeah, well, that was the thing. I said this to James once, and I was pleased that, you know, James is a great thinker, but this had never occurred to him. I said the whole premise of this show is very flawed, but hopefully no one will spot it. Yeah. Is that when you have to stand there and go, the producers told us we had to drive to Glasgow. Yeah. You're a grown man, say no. Yeah. You don't have to drive to Glasgow. Why do you have to drive to Glasgow? You just say no, say I don't want to. I'm just going to go home. But no one ever picks up
on the last episode of the Grand Tour, where the idea is they just say
this is the thing. This is where this sort of then manifested itself. It's like, well, what would they do on the last episode? They'd say no. It's been brewing for 22 years. They've had enough. And there's more noisy tyres coming past.
There's also a Nissan Figaro by the looks of things. We've yet to have a Figaro on the SPOTCAST.
Oh, look at that.
Harry, can you guess which one's the Figaro?
Look how tiny that looks as well.
That's so nice. So they're just Nissan Micras, right?
Yeah, it's a K10 Micra underneath.
It's a K10?
Yeah.
Damn. That's why they fizzle away when it rains.
Yeah.
So did you get to go on many of these adventures?
I used to go on more of them. And then, as time went on, I don't know, I just sort of...
Did the novelty wear off?
The novelty wore off a little bit, because being on shoots is just a lot of standing around.
I don't think a lot of people realise it's not as
in the back of a
fun
car.
as it looks on television.
No, it is great fun in the sense of you go, hey, we're making something.
Of course,
here.
yeah.
There's that, well, I mean, you must get it doing this. You finish it, and you go, we made something there. Yeah. There's something there. As long as that recorded, I'll get back. We'll look at the footage. There will be something. There'll be something. Yeah. So you have you know, engaged in the act of creation, and that's quite thrilling. But yeah, there's it's also just quite tiring and sometimes quite stressful.
Yeah,
and
I
don't know, even on days like today, somehow on a film shoot, I would always end up getting sunburnt.
Yeah, we'd get sunburnt a lot because it's such an easy solution, sun cream, but it just doesn't.
But when it's a day like today, and you can see now actually the sun is just trying to break through.
Oh Lord! Looked like it had been through a pile of excrement. Oh, I have to say, you must be the only person I've ever seen open an email with the term piss and shit.
Did I?
Yes, you did.
Oh, because I forgot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, piss and shit.
Yeah. Email
great.
email Tourette's. You've got proper eyeballing there.
Yeah.
That guy was
3:30.
checking you out. Yeah, I used to have. Well, I still do, I suppose, have the same name as another person who worked at the BBC.
Oh, really?
And he was promoted, the other Richard Porter was promoted to be head of news.
Oh.
So he had the OG Richard Porter BBC email address. So I had to have one with a number in it.
Richard Porter 2?
Richard Porter 01. Weirdly, but he was just Richard Porter.
Yeah.
And he used to get emails meant for me. And sometimes that was just, you know, someone going, "Hi Richard, just to confirm, you know, that the booking for this car will be, has been received." But sometimes it would be from a mate. It would start with, "All right, you twat," or something like that, and he would just forward everything on without comment. But every so often, a very dry sense of humour, I think he had. He would just put, "I think this is for you," and I'd scroll down and it would say, "Oi, knobhead, what the fuck are you doing?"
Cheese, what are you doing? Okay,
from one of my friends.
Did people ever email you thinking you were him?
Yes.
And like they've emailed the head of news and they get piss and shit back.
No,
some kind of diplomatic issue between countries.
Well, no, I was a couple of times. I think I got emails. I can't even remember specifically what. Where it was a bit like, "Oh, I don't think I should have seen this."
Yes. Oh yeah.
And but then I was like, well, I'm just going to forward it without comment, but he'll know I've seen it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But I'll just pretend I haven't. I mean, nothing major, but just sort of things, you know, where it wasn't like Fiona Bruce has strangled another homeless man. Red alert! Don't tell anyone.
Okay, so
just to be clear, Fiona Bruce has never done that. I'm just a stupid example.
That's what they'd want you to say. So I'm gonna fire some. These are things I wanted to talk about, but I have no idea how to phrase them as questions. So we're going to do like a sort of word association. I'm going to fire it at you.
Yeah, like a thought exercise.
Yeah, and see what who came up with it, any memories of it, whatever. The City Rover.
Yes.
Talk to me about the City Rover.
Disaster
of a vehicle, I should say.
Yeah, it was terrible. Now the funny thing is, Rover did lend us one, and I know this because I took it home for the night.
Wow.
It was catastrophically terrible. I was sitting there at some lights near the BBC in West London in this miserable, shitty little car.
Terrible car.
And I think my body language and my facial expression already had a sort of general sense of despair about them.
Yeah.
And the Top Gear magazine editor, Mikey Harvey, drove past me in a Range Rover, looked down at me and burst out laughing. And I thought, well, that says it all, doesn't it? So we had been lent one, and I went back to the office and I went, bloody hell, that car is cack.
Yeah.
Let's do it. And we'll, you know, it's sometimes quite fun to tear into something that deserves it.
Yeah.
And so it was agreed we were going to do it, and James would do it. And
because they kind of got a whiff that you weren't going to paint it in a great light.
Well, they knew.
Yeah.
I
think they knew it was a shit car. You can't.
I subsequently found the PR guy at Rover at that point was a chap called Kevin Jones, lovely guy. And the man who ran MG Rover was another Kevin Howe.
Kevin Howe.
And so there'd obviously been, when we, I think, put in the request, can we have a City Rover back again because we want to film it?
What the?
I think.
That's terrifying.
It is. Imagine crashing into that.
Awful contraption. So like Jeremy says, all farm equipment is just stuff that's designed to kill you.
It's just an injury in waiting. So, yeah, there must have been a red flag at that point. And I presume some meetings. And I only found out many years later that apparently the boss of MG Rover, who was known as a bit of a thug, Kevin Howe, pulled Kevin Jones, the PR man, on one side and went, Kevin, if Top Gear get a City Rover for filming, someone called Kevin is going to lose his job, and it won't be me.
That's fantastic.
So but then what happened is quite interesting in that it wasn't as simple as just go, oh fine, we'll go undercover, we'll go to a dealership. I think the lawyers said, can you prove they've said absolutely that they categorically will not lend you a car? And we went, well, they said it on the phone. And they said it sort of like, oh yeah, sorry, because there's going to be a model year change, and so we don't have any.
Oh
so
yeah,
we
they
can't.
made up some.
They made up a few fudgy excuses to avoid saying a flat no.
Yeah.
And we told this to the lawyers, and the lawyers went, all right, I mean, I don't know what legal shaky ground we were on, but they urged us to get cast iron proof that Rover would not lend us that car.
Okay.
So Andy Willman had to ring Kevin, the PR man, and record the call.
Oh, wow.
But then, of course, legally you have to say record the call. So he had to go, Kevin, this call is being recorded, not for quality assurance purposes, but because I just need you to confirm to me that you will not lend BBC Top Gear television programme a City Rover vehicle.
What? I'd love that recording.
I know, imagine that.
Yeah, wow.
So we got our proof that they were saying no. But the other thing is that, of course, give it a few years and we wouldn't have been able to do that because the salesman would have gone, oh, look, it's James May off the television.
Yeah, yeah. The
James
Sacha Baron Cohen issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd have had to put some wig on or something.
James was so unknown that he could walk in wearing this ridiculously horrible big tie that had a camera hidden in it.
The camera couldn't have been that small.
No, it wasn't. It was 2003, was that, or 4, whatever it was?
It was an early season.
It was early, so it must have been series 2 or 3.
I can't believe you got to drive a City Rover that was lent to Top Gear.
I know.
That's quite
this
cool.
is the bit that I had. They did originally lend us a car just because we said, can we just have it in to try?
Yeah.
Because that was a pretty common thing where we'd just try out a car, and as the sort of office resident car nerd, I would be, given first dibs to go and have a little go in it. And
well, alarm bells must have rang for them when they got wind that you wanted it back.
That's
they were like,
it.
this car's terrible.
Yeah, they're onto us.
Yeah.
Oh shit. So, and we did it as a one-er, because I remember my mate Jim, who was the researcher on that, or one of them, said it was an amazing shoot because they were all done by lunchtime, and I think they went for a pub lunch.
Awesome.
Because it had to basically happen in real time,
Yeah,
so there was no way
yeah.
the director could go, oh, can we just do that again? Oh, can you get another drive-by? It had to be done for real.
I'm trying to think if you ever had a different bit that was in real time like that.
Gosh.
There's a long catalogue to think through, so
even
I'm sure we
though,
missed
I think even the ones that, usually the director would have gone, oh, well, it wasn't hidden camera, so the director could go, like a bobsleigh run or something.
Yeah.
They'd run the bob down again just to get extra shots. It was people... Do you know what? Actually, someone from the office went to the Rover dealership and did a test drive in the City Rover in advance to find out the route that the salesman would take you on.
Oh, wow, okay.
So that we could then station members of our team with big bags with cameras in them to get the drive-by shots. And we had Katie, one of our researchers, playing the role of James's girlfriend.
Yeah.
And there was some question mark raised about that, possibly by James, that Katie would have been, I don't know, 25 at that point, and James was in his 40s. And I think maybe it was James who went, does this look a bit weird and wrong? I have a very young girlfriend. But we decided, I can't remember why it was decided that had to be the setup. And it was all just done, hidden cameras, people standing by the road, someone in a Fiat Panda to come alongside and make it look natural. Yes, the Fiat Panda was
so good.
And it was all absolutely sort of one-shot deal. Excuse me. And then they went to the pub.
That's brilliant.
And it was one of those ones where it was like, I think it was one of those early films that helped to set or cement the tone of the show, which is
Amazon delivery driver using an ex-Royal Mail van.
Yeah, there's a sort of irony there, isn't there?
Yeah. So sorry, John.
The tone of the show is with the mischief at the heart of the show. That just helped to sell it and to show that we weren't doing what other car shows did.
Just the whole selling point.
Which was the ambition of it, yeah.
Okay, Brighton drivetime radio. I did write Brighton drivetime radio disaster, but I feel like I got the point across.
Yeah, it wasn't very good, though, was it?
Did you have much involvement in that at all? Or
I mean, I'm not trying after the act to absolve my role in that, but I do remember going, isn't this a bit self-indulgent, and won't it not work very well? Because I think by that time I developed this theory that our greatest failures were always when we moved away from cars.
Yeah.
If the presenters weren't within sort of touching distance of a car, things tended to unravel a bit and turn into slightly cack items. So there was so much bloody complexity. Jeremy was adamant he'd be able to see the traffic cams.
It was so good.
And the complexity involved in having somebody in the control room filming the screens and beaming them into the radio studio.
I couldn't believe you were pulling that off.
It cost a frigging fortune. Like, just because Jeremy went, no, I really need to be able to do this. Like, you don't, though. They don't normally do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a bit...
From a technical standpoint, that bit alone was like, how are you managing that? Getting the CCTV cameras in the room with him.
So stupid. And then... But it did have one of my favourite, again, sort of mischief and cheekiness, my favourite Hammond ad-libs. Do you remember the bit where the sports presenter came in?
Oh, he was not happy.
And he was absolutely unamused about the whole thing.
And Hammond was asking him the rules of cricket.
Yeah, and he went... Because the sports presenter, from memory, he said something like, try looking up the rules of cricket. It's a sport. It's been going on for over 200 years.
He was not happy.
Richard went, what, the same game? And it was just, and you could see that tipped the guy over the edge. He was furious about these idiots coming in and not taking radio seriously. But yeah, otherwise that was a bit of a shit item. So
yeah, so there are some items that you're not particularly proud of, and it's weird.
They can't all be home runs, no, Charlie. That's the problem.
It's bits like when Hammond goes to the toilet and he hears the radio on in the toilet, and a cameraman has followed him into the toilet to have a piss. Where I'm like,
I think
straying slightly far away from the point in this bit.
Now I might be wrong, but I have a feeling that although yes, that was set up, that was actually inspired by Richard's experiences in local radio.
I can imagine there was a lot of, because it was funny how out of place he seemed, even though that's where he came from.
Yes. Well, I think, apart from anything, he was slightly embarrassed.
Yes.
Because
the drive up in the Cadillac where they're talking about where James and Clarkson are just not taking it seriously whatsoever.
Yeah.
And Hammond is very adamant that they've got to do it perfectly, and
that's it.
So good.
Do you remember off camera Richard's saying, they get a lot of deliveries here, don't they? So this is the actual post office. Maybe he's coming to steal the Amazon package to spite the people with his old van. I seem to remember Richard off camera sort of being a bit unhappy that he was having to make a worse radio show than he was capable of, because he is in fact an extremely competent disc jockey.
Particularly funny if
he just did it brilliantly.
I feel like there's some weird rule in the Geneva Convention that we're not allowed to record someone delivering mail or something.
In case they're having something delivered that they shouldn't have.
Yeah.
I don't know what that would be, but yeah.
Okay, acronym for USB.
Was that a Stig intro? Oh, no, it was an intro to the whole show, wasn't it?
Yes. One of our favourite Top Gear bits. He's very excited by this. It was Hammond forgets the acronym for USB, and then it is for America, and then USB.
Yeah.
Was that whose doing was that?
I think that was me.
Was it? That's one of our favourites.
Oh, good.
Yes, we like that.
I think I was quite proud of that one at the time, because what used to happen is on a Monday, during a studio run, I'd be in the office, the presenters wouldn't be there usually, so I would have the day to do a draft studio script, and particularly focusing on do the menu at the top, Stig intro, guest intro, all these things that needed to be there.
The menu is such a great term for that.
Well, as it got sillier and sillier, and I had the absolute backing of Jeremy, who usually had to read it out, because he liked the silliness. Wilman hated the silliness. He thought we should, tease what was in the show, whet people's appetites.
Absolutely.
Our argument was, we're so many years in now, if you know that Top Gear is on, you know what you're going to get. You're either going to switch off immediately or stick with it just to see. So really the menu was a superfluous hangover from when we were a much younger show. So Jeremy was quite happy for me to dick around. So I used to write my sort of suggested menu with the hope that he would go, yep.
Yeah. So is he seeing what is on screen when he's reading the menu pieces? Like, because the acronym for America doesn't make any sense without
You've got to
actual,
hit the clip. Yeah, well, that's it. So what I would do, if it was a one that had to hit a clip or that didn't make sense without, and increasingly we sort of liked the ones that
went with the clip,
were more related to a clip rather than just a generic shot of a car driving past. So I would make sure that I had because the other thing I'd do on a Monday is do the voiceover scripts, which then on the Monday evening the presenter would come in and do those. So it was really useful workflow because while going through the films for that week to do the VO,
I thought it was a hearse for a second then.
I thought that was a hearse for a minute.
Yeah.
It's I would try and keep an eye out for something that might make a good menu item, and so that would have been one of those where it's just like a moment of inspiration around being as silly as possible, but then have it ready so I could go, because inevitably Jeremy would pull up a script on the computer in the writing area and he'd go, I don't understand.
Yeah,
and
this
I'd be
doesn't
like,
make any sense.
bear with me, watch this, and then you'd know whether it worked or not. I'm trying to think of other ones like that where it's like it's just a satisfying bit of.
The menu is a really good example of something Top Gear did years before the real internet age of media came into play that was so ahead of its time. Like every single YouTube video has a menu on it now. You get that like first 20 seconds, even hours, where you get clips from in the show. Like you guys invented sludge content. Are you aware what sludge content is?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so sludge content it's a symptom of the TikTok age.
Okay.
Where the top half of the screen will be someone like Joe Rogan talking about something on his podcast, and the bottom half of the screen will be like someone playing Subway Surfers or playing Minecraft.
Okay.
Yeah. So you've got the slower attention thing at the top, and then something. So you're like, oh, I'm listening, but I'm bored, so I'm going to look at them playing the video game at the bottom.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was the 535 diesel track test where Jeremy explains twin turbos, and on the left-hand side of the screen you have a video of fluffy kittens.
Bloody hell, I've forgotten that.
He's like, I know this will bore you, so here's some fluffy kittens for you to watch.
Yeah,
which is the first example I could think of sludge content, which is something that didn't crop up till 15 years
See, that's
later.
the thing. Well, okay. Well, I think that was Jeremy's idea from memory, but
you can claim that if you like.
We'll take en masse as a show. We can take credit for sludge content, but menus, I think, are actually old-fashioned telly way back used to do menus. I think we were maybe
definitely
a little
had a spin to it.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. It was because if you watch early shows, I bet the menus they were probably pretty straight, weren't they? That's the thing. It was the joy of taking an established thing and then just mucking with it.
Yes. Yeah, very much started like the Ferrari F430 on our test track.
Yes.
Or like, and then it turns into like, I look at a leaf.
Yes, I wear a hat and all that stuff. Yeah.
I wasn't until I just said that out loud where I can hear your cadence in Jeremy's voice in the menu.
Well, it's probably the other way around. I think I've probably just assumed.
You've adapted Jeremy's.
One thing that Jeremy does sometimes in the menus, I remember, purely to amuse himself and me and nobody else, is he does a slightly strange intonation, which is taken from. Do you know a show called The Day to Day?
No, I'm not familiar
Spoof
with
news show. I mean, God, it's old now. It's like 30 years old, 25 years old. Brilliant pastiche of the news. Chris Morris, the guy who did like Four Lions and stuff, it's his show. And he played this, he was the anchorman on this news channel, this news show. But again, going back to what we were saying ages ago about the sort of doing things that just catch your ear because they're weird.
Yeah.
He used to do this thing where he'd sometimes just deliberately enunciating things in weird ways. So he'd just go, that's the news. Yeah. God, I wish it wasn't. And Jeremy would sometimes in a menu do that intonation. Yeah. And then, so we do the menu at the very end of the studio recording. We'd be inevitably surrounded by the audience with
very aggressive people.
Cars lined up, and it would be and that's it. And on that bombshell, good night. Crane goes up, we all stay in the same position. I'd hand Jeremy a script, and he would read to, actually usually the menu wasn't to pictures, but he would just read them out so they were recorded on tape somewhere. And so sometimes he would go, and I wear a hat in a silly way. And he would then catch my eye and I'd just go,
yeah, perfect.
Because we both know day-to-day intonation.
Yeah.
And everyone else would be just like, what the fuck's he
going
doing?
on? Yeah, no, perfect. But that really was the charm and the character of the Clarkson way of doing things. What a funny looking thing.
Yeah, I was trying to work out what it's for, but
I've no idea.
They're quite sturdy.
What's this, Mark 1 Focus? Love a Mark 1 Focus.
Look at that.
Cute colour.
Tidy, or tidy-ish. It's got a dent in it.
Yeah, a little
That's
dent.
an early one as well.
Yeah. Robin Space Shuttle.
Yes.
Which I'm very, very, very annoyed at myself because my girlfriend and wonderful co-host, Kaisha, for my birthday bought me a tattoo, and I was going to be the Reliant Robin Space Shuttle on my arm, but I couldn't get the design right in time, and I kind of got all in my head about it and didn't do it, and it would have just been very funny to present you with my...
That would be amazing.
Yes.
I've never seen that done, but I can picture it in my head. Would you do it just like black outline?
Yes,
kind of,
absolutely. Yeah, slightly cocked as it comes over.
Yeah.
That is eventually. You'll know I'm doing well financially because I'll be covered in Reliant Robin tattoos. Just the one Reliant Robin tattoo.
Covered in things off the telly that you've enjoyed.
Yes, yeah. Reliant. That is the next tattoo.
Well, how much? Sorry, a rude question, but how much would it cost to have a Reliant Robin tattoo?
It can't be much, but. So this fella here was like 30 quid, but that was like 5 years ago.
Okay.
And I currently in my bank account have 50p. I'm not doing great financially. Otherwise I would be covered in tattoos.
Yes, is that old Robin Williams thing about cocaine is God's way of telling you you've got too much money?
Yes,
but for you it'd be like tats is God's way. If you've got a full face tattoo, it means that you're absolutely rolling in it now.
And a 750i.
Oh, okay.
Stig mask, just the Stig's face on my face.
I think that was one of the intros, wasn't it? I used to like that.
Say
he's got a tattoo of his face on his face. I like that one. Some say he carries a picture of his wallet in his wallet, stuff like that. I like those ones.
Yeah, the nonsensical ones.
He's a man who's trapped in his own logic loop.
Yes. I haven't heard these before. Did Ben ever suggest any? Did he ever get any say?
No, he didn't actually. I don't know that. I've never asked Ben I think Ben just sort of wearily tolerated the fact that we made the Stig into this stupid character.
Yes.
I think Ben was just interested in the driving. No, he never raised it.
Sorry, yes, Space Shuttle.
Oh yes, sorry, yeah.
So if I remember rightly, it stemmed from meeting the rocket propulsion guys from the Olympic special.
Yes,
which is
right.
the same one where you have the Stig jump.
Yeah, in the mini.
Yeah. Well, no, he was on the ski.
Oh, that's right. Yes, he was, wasn't he?
Which I'm assuming wasn't Ben.
No, it wasn't Ben.
But yes, so you met those guys through that, I'm presuming.
Yeah, and I think it was possibly just an idle conversation where they went, we might have already talked about putting a car in space. So it felt like putting a car in space was a constant throughout making that show.
Right.
Because that wasn't the only time it was discussed. And, all these mad schemes involving balloons and things to lift a very, very, very lightened car up into the stratosphere. And it was technically possible, I think, but very expensive.
Very expensive.
And, fraught with other problems like aviation crashing into it and stuff. And... yeah, so I think the rocket people, from memory, the rocket people went, we could put a car sort of technically to the edge of space.
Yeah. Was that really the goal? Did you really think it would get as far as the edge of space?
I can't remember how high it was supposed to go. It was a lot higher than it did. That was one of those ones that was sincerely trying to do as well as we could.
I didn't know how far you thought it was going to go.
I can't remember now.
Because the way I always saw it was that there's a point where you're trying, and then there's this point that's going to be so extortionately expensive to cross.
Yes.
That is where the contrived it blew up came from. But I didn't know if it actually that point was further along, or if that point was actually sooner and it went further. Because if I remember rightly, the boosters didn't decouple.
Yeah, there was I think a little explosive bolt.
Yes, that didn't explode.
And it just didn't go. And
so that was fully part of the plan, was the explosive bolt was.
Oh yeah. No, what you saw on TV was not the plan. And it probably seemed like it might have been because, Top Gear thrived on calamity. Yes. But no, that one we really, really got. But apart from this, because it was bloody expensive to build that
imagine.
rocket. And those rocket guys were fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a big deal for them. I think at the time it was the most powerful rocket that had ever been fired in the UK.
Really?
I think so.
That's a hell of a claim.
Yeah, well, I suppose there's not massive competition. If it said the US, you'd have gone, Jesus Christ, really? But no, it was...
We did rockets at one point, but we didn't use them. So maybe we didn't, because it was the 4 rocket, I think it was.
I went once to the Science Museum in London.
Leicester? Or London?
No, there is that one in Leicester, isn't there? But no, they used to, certainly in the Science Museum in London, they had a rocket from the British space programme in the 50s, I think, hanging from the ceiling.
4, yeah.
And it was there because it never got used. The programme got cancelled because it was too expensive. And you look up at this thing and you go, well, that is a big rocket.
Yeah, they're big rockets.
And then in a cabinet just over there, they have a series of scale models. And there is a model of the rocket hanging from the ceiling. And you go...
That's, yeah, compared
and
to
then
like
you've got a Saturn. And you go, oh my God, those Saturn rockets were gigantic.
To see one of them in person is a bucket list thing, just to see the scale of those things.
Yeah, so no, the Robin rocket was a sincere effort.
What a visual. That Robin just with the wings as well, it's so good.
It's got a great ad lib in that. I'm going to misremember it now, but it involves Hammond and May getting their giggles because one of them, they're watching the Rocketeers using a really sort of khaki step ladder to do something, and one of them goes, "It's one small step ladder for man, one giant leap for mankind."
They just lose it,
and they get the giggles, and it's really sweet because it's just like a natural moment of two mates.
I love that it was just those two as well because it's such an easy setting to place Clarkson in.
Yeah.
But you didn't, and they kind of get, like you said, it's kind of charming. They have like a geeky, giggling nature to them as a pairing.
My memory is that Jeremy, and I think this was how we presented it on the show, but my memory is that Jeremy genuinely sort of didn't get this. He thought it was doomed to failure or it was stupid or whatever,
yes,
and he just went, I'm not going to take part. And we went, that's all right, you don't have to.
Yeah.
And then, I think he... For once, actually, his telly sense failed him because it became, I think, one of our more beloved items.
Oh, absolutely,
and sure. I hate to use the word iconic, but certainly that, well,
it's the definition
it's a
of iconic.
recognisable
it's
shape.
Robin with fucking wings on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I'm glad to know that you were trying.
We really were trying, honestly, we were trying our best.
Season 9 fire, season 9 to 10, I think it was, there was a fire at the... what's it called? Storage facility.
Oh, yeah.
Was that played up for the camera, or did you really...
No, there really was a fire.
There really was a fire.
There was a fire and our set got burnt, yeah.
And they had a cool wall at some point as well. I'm assuming you made that. They had like a burnt cool wall. I'm assuming you made a cool wall and burnt it.
I think we might have had to because the whole thing just went.
Wow. Well, how much of a disaster was that behind the scenes? Or could you just shrug it off at that point?
Yeah, it's just a bit of a pain in the arse, but I think it was probably quite close to when the set was due to be installed back in the studio for filming, and so we had to sort of hastily do it, which is why we couldn't get some new chairs made. So for that series, I think we just had like really garish sofa and an armchair, didn't we?
Really easy to get in and out of,
Yes. What I'd forgotten, and I was listening to Tiff on a podcast the other day.
What a voice to listen to.
Yeah.
The way that man says Lamborghini and really goes down to the depth of his soul to say that.
I still have, I quite often when I want to talk about a car's handling, I have to stop myself going, handling, because Tiff says it like that.
The way he speaks is fantastic.
Well, Tiff was talking about that on the Smoking Tyre podcast.
Yes.
In the context of, we said, our storage warehouse has burnt down. We think it was fifth gear.
Yes.
Those bastards out to get us. As a joke.
Of course, yeah.
I'd forgotten that people were like messaging fifth gear going, how dare you? You sore losers just because your show's not as popular as theirs. And it's like, it was a joke.
Yeah. Damn.
And Tiff mentioned this the other day on that podcast, and I was like, I'd forgotten about that people took it a little bit too seriously.
There's a Fabia VRS.
Oh, yeah.
See the soot on them? That's a timid one, though. That's been looked after.
It sounds unusual.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, guys.
We interrupt this episode of the WAYMOE SPOTCAST for more of the WAYMOE SPOTCAST. If you want to see even more of the WAYMOE SPOTCAST, you can subscribe to the WAYMOE membership.
WAYMOE. £3 a month.
£3 a month. Are you committing to that?
Yeah.
Okay, for the price of a pint at Wetherspoons, you get more WAYMOE.
WAYMOE.
It's going to start off, you're going to get 1 extra episode a month out of us.
Then slowly but surely, you will be sent riddles in which you can decode our personal home addresses.
Wow, look at that! Yes!
Aww, Elsie. If you want to find out where Charlie lives and where his mum lives, make sure to subscribe.
Don't get it twisted, it is the same address. Peugeot Drivers skip, my favourite Top Gear moment.
Is it?
The Peugeots, yeah.
Oh, okay.
The first time I've had to pause it because I couldn't see because I was laughing so hard. Maniac, Yobbo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of.
How did that come about? Because it starts, it really does. It's the full gambit of Peugeot, from like the pepper shakers all the way up to.
Yeah, that's the one thing about that item. That on the one hand, it played to that frequent criticism of Top Gear. Oh, why have I got to mess around? But if you watch it back, there is a proper
real
history lesson in there.
Absolutely, yeah.
It ramps to the messing around.
Yeah.
But if you go back and you want to know the history of Peugeot, there is a potted history in there. So it came about because we had started doing these potted history of car company items, and they'd gone down quite well. And I think we'd done Lancia. Had we done Saab by that point? I think we maybe had. I'm trying to remember what else. Maybe it was just those two.
The Ford was the first funeral for a Ford. It was the one I remember the most. Did that cover everything? I can't remember.
No, that was just sort of the history of the Ford, the medium-sized Ford saloon, so the Cortina, Mondeo, Sierra, all that. So I suppose we were thinking we should do another car company. And it's as unsophisticated as just having a list and going, no, not them, maybe them, what them, And I, like Jeremy and James know enough about cars to kind of go, they've got an interesting history, they probably haven't. Someone like Jaguar, a revered company, made some great cars, but they haven't made that many different models, and their company history is pretty straightforward. A man founded a company, ran the company, then he died, and then they carried on. It's not got as many twists and turns apart from sort of financial instability as, say, the Saab. Well, I mean, Saab, didn't make that many cars, but because they were so odd. Yeah,
they were very interesting. They were a character in themselves.
Because actually, that was the thing. Saab was an outlier when we were looking for another one to do. I can't remember if I'd said Saab. And Jeremy went, oh, God, Saab. And then I think he went, we could do Saab, but we can say what a bunch of idiots they were, because they always just were deliberately strange, and that's why they went out of business. And I was like, I don't know, though. And it might have been James who read a book about Saab and went, this is really interesting, but also it's got enough bits in it that would make telly that I think we could do something. And then Jeremy came round to it, and we did Saab. But there's the Peugeot one that we're looking for someone to do. Went, what about Peugeot? Because there's been no greater sort of loss of mojo in the car industry than Peugeot used to make the most lovely, pretty, great driving
only by
cars.
Mitsubishi now. I say Mitsubishi have completely lost their mojo. They just do crossovers now.
Yes, it's true, isn't it? And then they sort of quit Europe because they just screwed that up. So, it just came from there. But it was like, okay, so what do we do? And it just kind of grew from there. I think it was one of those ones where we maybe just went round to Jeremy's flat, me and James, and we just sat there and we just kind of bashed ideas through. And I honestly can't remember who sort of came up with what, but we generally agreed, let's do a sketch where Peugeot management decide
the sketch is so
to
good.
do shit cars instead of good ones.
Spitella Kleenex.
Very
horrible.
So and then, I mean, I will take credit for going, there has to have the Eiffel Tower out of the window.
I was about to say, the Eiffel Tower at the background is so on the nose.
Well, it's an American film cliche, isn't it? Which I saw someone doing only quite recently in quite a modern film. You just go, still?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And at great expense, a green screen was built against a large window at a hotel in Oxfordshire to make that the possible.
Was the drink real?
Yes.
So you're okay.
I'm in that, and I'm absolutely wankered.
Yeah, with your funny moustache.
Because we turned up. It was the last thing we filmed that day at a hotel that had this wood-panelled boardroomy type looking place. And some of the production team had already gone ahead and set the room with all of these sort of slightly xenophobic props like snails and things on the table. And the green screen was already up. That had taken all day to build. And we got changed into our black roll necks and painted on our little moustaches and everything and slicked our hair down. And we sat at the table, and the lead cameraman, our DOP, Ben, went, uh-oh, this is a glass table. It's reflecting the green of the green screen. So when you try and key in your Eiffel Tower, it'll key onto the table as well. Yeah. That'll look terrible. So there had to be a lot more fiddling with angles and covering as much of the table as possible.
Yeah, did no one get a tablecloth?
Do you know, I don't think the hotel had one. Because that would have been the obvious one, but
like a bed sheet
or maybe we decided that no boardroom would have a tablecloth in it. So I can't remember, but
it had to be a green screen. You couldn't have put a picture of the Eiffel Tower behind.
It would have had to be huge. That's the thing. I mean, maybe we could, but I think we wanted it to look deliberately a bit rubbish in that way that sort of, keyed in stuff can.
Yes.
So we just sat there because we had to be in our places because they were fiddling with the lights, and it was a big production, really, considered for a throwaway sketch of stupidity.
45 seconds or maybe.
And so we sat there, and there was wine poured into the glasses, and I assumed they'd have got prop wine or Ribena or something, but no, it was real wine. And it'd been a long day.
Yeah.
And I knew because that we were going to another hotel nearby to stay the night, and I knew that for various logistical reasons, I wasn't driving. I had a space in someone else's car to get back. So I could have a drink.
Yep.
So as me and James were both drinking the prop wine, to the point that one of the researchers was starting to come in and go, you need that filling up because there's no wine in your glass now because you've drunk it. And we were still, and it's like, are we ready? And it's really hot in the room as well. And so it's like, and still camera people are going, that doesn't look good.
That doesn't look good, no.
No, they're, to their credit, they're perfectionists.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you're sitting in a hot room with a glass of wine in front of you waiting for perfectionists to achieve perfection, there's only one thing to do, and it's to drink the wine.
Yeah.
So,
that's so good.
I was absolutely wankered, and so I think was James, because his spit and Kleenex is all a bit vigorous, and it's like, all right, James, calm down. So, really quite giddy. But tremendous fun to do. And it's also just one of those moments where you go, we just sat around talking rubbish and thinking of things that made us laugh. And now we're here with all of these people and all of these cameras and this enormous green screen and all of this effort that's gone into a stupid whim that we had a few weeks ago when we were in front of the laptop.
That's so good. I got so many. I wrote an abundance of questions. Right, let's try quick fire it a bit more.
Go on.
Okay, jumping the wedding in the Lincoln limo. Yes. Where'd that come from?
Jim Wiseman, who was our researcher at the time, one of the most lateral brains and brilliant minds I've ever worked with. He's a very sort of crazy, free-thinking mind. And this is one of his early suggestions. I think his original one was, they always do that thing where they jump a motorbike over a row of buses. Why don't we jump a bus over a row of motorbikes, which we did, I think, in the first series. And that's Jim's brain. And then he went, do you think a wedding limo could jump over a wedding or something, or whatever it was that we did? And we just went, let's find out.
It didn't.
It was as simple as that. It was in those early days, because we hadn't done anything, so there was everything still to do.
Yes.
And if you have people like Jim around, whose capacity for lateral thought is immense, and he just comes up with something absolutely unexpected but brilliant, you can just go, all right,
let's do that.
Let's do that.
Yeah, fair. Naturally, Hans is wet. He's standing under a waterfall.
Yes.
Where'd that come from?
That's
the only piece of German that James knows. Allegedly.
Well, I think that's it. It's the only piece of German that James knows. Yeah, James knows that, and I, the only one I can really remember is meine Schwimmwagen ist die Ecke, which means my amphibious car is round the corner.
Oh. Which should be great for Hans.
Well, exactly. It feels like there's synchronicity there. I can also ask, wann fährt der nächste Zug nach Köln, bitte? When does the next train to Cologne leave?
Oh, brilliant.
So if I'm ever in Cologne, I'm screwed, but otherwise that's quite handy.
Okay, the fracas.
Yes.
A sore subject, I can imagine.
Yeah, a little bit, but bygones.
Bygones, yes. How did you find out? Was it for a phone call? Was it through... We are being attacked by
being attacked
bugs.
by a wasp. I messaged one of our team just to find out how the shoot was going.
And they went, not well.
And he said, not well. And I said, oh, what's up? And he went, you better speak to Wilman.
Oh, that's not a fun text.
So I tried to get hold of Andy, left him a message, and then the person who did our PR and publicity internally at the BBC, who we had a very good relationship with.
I can imagine a busy job after that.
Yeah, busy job. But she was a sort of honorary member of the gang because she was around so much. And
she had to be, really.
She had to be. And she rang me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And went, Andy asked me to ring you. There's been some news.
Yeah.
I was like, what? And then she said, Jeremy's hit Oshin. I was like, he's done what?
Fucking hell.
It's just like I couldn't comprehend it because it's like of all the things to do, he's got Jeremy shouted at Oshin. You go, well, yeah, okay.
Well, Jeremy
fine.
said something a bit too.
He should probably go and say sorry. But yeah, this was just like it was incomprehensible. And then sort of everything unravelled from there.
Yes. Fracas, we spoke about this last time. The term fracas.
So weird.
So bizarre. I would love to track down. Someone somewhere was like, we should call this a fracas.
It was almost like they were trying to distract from the actual thing by using. Again, we're back to using words and sounds that hook the ear.
Well, you had your own.
We had our own. God, that's the ultimate one. Yeah, because it is. It's such a. But I suppose, you imagine, particularly being the BBC.
Ooh.
The BBC is can be sometimes a little bit of a neurotic organisation in terms of how it's perceived and how it presents itself.
Yeah.
And particularly around that time, I think the BBC was terrified of how the newspapers were going to write about it.
Yeah.
And it had lost some of the confidence that it once had. And so I imagine there was a long meeting where they went, was a scuffle, a coming together? And they must have run through a whole thesaurus worth of words before they went, fracas.
Yes.
Yes,
a word that will be permanently associated with that incident because it's such a what? Who says fracas?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like certain words, they do just get pinned to things like, girth is forever only used in pretty much one context.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
And fracas is only ever associated with Jeremy Clarkson, which is strange.
It's cute. Okay, we'll do one last question that you might not even be qualified.
How do you land a helicopter?
Who picked the music? Because there's some real fucking deep cuts in Top Gear. Like there's some Amon Tobin in some shows. There's Aphex Twin littered throughout the. Was it like, oh, I've got an idea for a song and you just suggest it, or was there someone there that was a real music nerd? Latterly, we had a music supervisor.
Right. I think it was his job title. But yeah, a guy whose job was to find good tracks.
Oh, okay.
Before that, it would be the editors and the directors who were in the edit suite putting the thing together. Andy Willman is in the edit a lot. He's a real music nerd. Yeah. I don't think he's an Aphex Twin fan, for example, but he has got good musical taste.
Yeah.
And, so when presented with something interesting like that, if it fitted perfectly, he would be
because imagine if Jeremy would just suggest prog rock most of the time.
Yeah. That's the thing. One of the things it's funny how some kinds of music work and some don't. Prog rock, I don't think works particularly well. No. So I would say it's not one person. Although latterly there was a music supervisor who would just be firing tracks across the edit. Or the editors would go, this sequence here we need something faster, electronic.
Yep.
Probably about 130 beats per minute. Ideally with a drop in it or something like that to hit this point where and then the music supervisor would go, hang on, I've got something, I know this here, right, try this. But then if you heard something on the radio or just something that you were listening to at home and you went, that'd make a really good bit of music for a car sliding around the track. You just ping it over to someone.
It's just great because the amount of reach that Top Gear had, I can't think of another reason a 14-year-old boy would hear some electronic remix of a Jill Scott-Heron poem on television. And you're like, the music really was one of the things that really stood out as a viewer.
Yeah, and it was the luxury of being at the BBC and being able to use almost everything.
Especially rewatching Top Gear now on the iPlayer, wherever it used to be, and they'll be like, and now cue the music, and some weird like, this isn't the A-Team theme, this is just some bloke with a flute trying to...
That used to be something we'd find endlessly funny in the earlier days of the show. We had a producer called Pete, series producer, and one of his jobs was to go through the finished show. At that point, usually there was a cut to see on a Friday, and he would have to do what we always called Library Music Friday.
Yeah.
Where he would sit there and he would have to replace or find library tracks to replace all the original music in the show for the international
what a job.
release of the programme, because they didn't have music clearance outside of the UK for the original tracks that the Beeve could clear here. And so Pete would just sit there with these bog-awful library tracks playing out on his computer and be like, oh, it's Library Music Friday, hey, everyone get down to this generic bit of indie rock.
Music, yeah.
And yeah, sometimes it was cack.
Yeah, you can really, really change the vibe. And like watching them welding and cutting things to just some weird...
Do you remember the one where Jeremy raced a Lotus Exige around the track against an Apache gunship?
Yes.
Helicopter gunship. And that used Ace of Spades.
Ace of Spades, I remember that vividly. Because that was the Exige you said had chicken wire in the back of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Ace of Spades, yeah.
Well, if you've ever seen the worldwide release of that with the replaced music in it, it really sucks the life out of that sequence. Yeah, it's just not as good. Yeah. Because what's as good as Ace of Spades while a helicopter chases a Lotus?
Yeah, very few things. Well, I think on that note, I've probably bored you to death with all the Top Gear talk.
No, like I said, I'm always really flattered, not only that people are still interested, but, you know, frankly, that people of a new generation are interested, or rather, you know, a generation that was a nice wave.
Yeah, it must have been a fan. Hello.
But yeah, people of your generation who grew up with the show, but you know, you could have perfectly well moved on to something else.
Yes.
And probably should, but here you are.
There is a point.
It's really
cyclical.
Nice that it's not just all been thrown in a skip and forgotten about.
No. The t-shirt is so old.
Oh yeah, I think this t-shirt might be older than me.
I've only just noticed that.
Found it in a charity shop.
Have you seen
we miss you, Pony.
This is an authentic piece of actual official Hyundai merch, but from South Korea.
Wow.
A mate of mine bought it for me when he went to Seoul, and he saw this and went, yeah. So I thought I'll dig out a really obscure car t-shirt for today.
Good. Whenever I think of Korea, I just think of pronouncing Seoul as Seoul at a table in a pub and getting practically being laughed out of the venue. And then I said draught beer as well. That didn't go down well either.
That's okay, because for years I thought the word Segway was pronounced Stig.
Yeah.
And I was so convinced of it that even now, when I say Segway, I sometimes have to stop and go, definitely Segway, not Stig. Don't say Stig. And I have said Stig by mistake on the podcast, and someone wrote in and went, you know, you're saying it wrong. I was like, yeah, I know. But I used to do that without awareness.
Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure.
Well, the sun's coming out, isn't it?
Yeah, as soon as we finish.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching, everybody. What a perfect ending. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the things. Au revoir.